My daughter called me at 2 a.m. whispering, "Dad, please come get me." When I arrived at her in-law's mansion, the mother-in-law blocked the door and sneered, "She is not leaving." I did not argue. I forced my way in. When I saw my daughter unconscious in the bathtub with needle marks on her arms, my blood started to boil. But they made one fatal mistake. They thought I was just a poor old black man in a beat-up truck. They had no idea who I really was. I am Arthur Robinson. I am 70 years old. I live in a part of Chicago that people from the suburbs only see on the news when something bad happens. To my neighbors, I am just the quiet old man who fixes their porches and drives a rusted 1995 Ford F-150. They see the grease under my fingernails and the gray stubble on my chin. They do not know about the $15 million in real estate assets I have accumulated since the 80s. They do not know I spent 40 years as a structural engineer building the very skyline they admire from a distance. I learned a long time ago that silence is a weapon, and being underestimated is a shield. But that night, my shield had to come down. The call came at exactly 2:14 in the morning. The phone buzzed on my nightstand, rattling against the wood. I was awake instantly. Old habits from working construction shifts never really leave you. I saw Jasmine's name on the screen. My heart skipped a beat. Jasmine never called this late. She was a pharmacist. She was disciplined. She was married to Hunter Kensington, a man I never trusted but tolerated because my daughter seemed happy. I slid the answer button. "Dad." Her voice was barely a whisper. It sounded thick and slurred, like she was trying to talk with a mouthful of cotton. "Dad, please come get me. They won't let me leave. Jasmine. What is wrong? Where are you?" "The walls are melting, Dad. They took Zoe." "I cannot stand up." Then I heard a crash. It sounded like a phone hitting a hardwood floor. Then a man's voice, muffled and angry. "Give me that. Give me." Then the line went dead. I did not call back. I did not call 911. The police in Hunter's wealthy suburb would take 20 minutes to arrive, and they would spend another 20 minutes asking me why a black man was agitated in their neighborhood. I did not have 40 minutes. I walked to the wall safe hidden behind the tool cabinet in my closet. I spun the dial. Click, click, click. The heavy door swung open. I ignored the stacks of property deeds and the rolls of cash. I reached for the cold steel of my Colt 1911. I checked the magazine. Full. I chambered around. The mechanical click was the only sound in the silent house. I put the gun in my waistband and grabbed my keys. The drive to the Kensington estate usually took 40 minutes. I made it in 25. The rain was hammering against the windshield of my truck, blurring the streetlights into streaks of violent yellow. My knuckles were white on the steering wheel. Jasmine was my only child. After my wife died, Jasmine and my granddaughter Zoe were the only reasons I kept breathing. If anyone hurt them, I would burn the world down. I pulled up to the wrought iron gates of the Kensington mansion. It was a sprawling estate that screamed old money and pretension. I punched in the code Jasmine had given me years ago. It still worked. The gates swung open slowly, too slowly. I gunned the engine and roared up the long driveway, my tires chewing up their perfectly manicured gravel. I parked my truck right on the front lawn, crushing a bed of prize-winning tulips. I did not care. I killed the engine and stepped out into the rain. The house was dark except for a light in the foyer. I walked up the stone steps, my heavy work boots thudding against the pavement. I pounded on the massive oak door. "Open the door!" My voice was a low growl. A minute later, the porch light flicked on. The heavy door opened just a crack held by a security chain. Patricia Kensington stood there. She was wearing a silk robe that probably cost more than my truck. Her face was covered in night cream and her eyes were cold and hard like marbles. "Mr. Robinson," she said. Her voice dripped with that polite condescension I had heard my whole life. "Do you have any idea what time it is? You are disturbing the neighborhood. Where is my daughter?" "She is sleeping," Patricia sniffed. She had a bit too much wine at dinner. She was hysterical earlier, but Hunter calmed her down. "You know how emotional she gets. Go home, Arthur. You are making a scene." I looked at her. I saw the lie in the twitch of her left eye. I saw the nervousness in the way she gripped the door frame. I said, "Open the door, Patricia." She laughed. It was a dry, brittle sound. "Or what? You will huff and puff. Look at you. You are soaking wet and you smell like old oil. Go back to your side of town before I call private security. They are not as patient as I am." She started to close the door. That was her mistake. She judged me by my clothes. She judged me by my skin. She forgot what I did for a living. I am a structural engineer. I know how things are built, and I know exactly how they break. I did not yell. I did not beg. I walked back to my truck and reached into the bed. I pulled out my 3-foot iron pry bar. The metal was cold and heavy in my hand, rain-slicked and familiar. I walked back to the door. Patricia was watching me through the glass side panel, her eyes widening slightly. I looked at the hinges. French oak, solid core, beautiful craftsmanship. But wood has a yield point. Everything has a yield point. I jammed the flat end of the pry bar into the gap between the frame and the deadbolt. Patricia screamed something, but I tuned her out. I braced my boot against the stone archway. I channeled 70 years of rage, 70 years of being told to go to the back entrance, 70 years of building palaces for people who would not let me use the front door. I heaved. There was a sickening crack as the wood splintered. The deadbolt tore right through the frame. The security chain snapped like a piece of cheap jewelry. The door swung inward, banging violently against the interior wall. I stepped into the foyer. My boots left muddy prints on the white marble floor. Patricia was backed up against the staircase, clutching her silk robe, her face pale with shock. "You broke my door!" she screeched. "You animal!" "Where is she?" I asked again. My voice was calm, deadly calm. "Get out of my house." A movement at the top of the stairs caught my eye. It was Hunter, my son-in-law. He was wearing pajama bottoms and holding an aluminum baseball bat. He looked terrified, but he was trying to look tough. "Get out, Arthur," he yelled, his voice cracking. "I am warning you. I have the right to defend my home." I looked at the bat. Then I looked at him. I reached into my waistband and pulled out the Colt 1911. I did not point it at him. Not yet. I pointed it straight up at the crystal chandelier hanging 20 feet above us. A monstrosity of glass and light that Patricia loved more than she loved her own son. Boom! The gunshot was deafening in the enclosed space. The chandelier exploded. Glass rained down like diamonds. Hunter screamed and covered his head, dropping the bat. Patricia shrieked and fell to her knees. "The next bullet goes in your knee, Hunter. Where is my daughter?" Hunter was shaking so hard his teeth were chattering. He pointed a trembling finger toward the hallway on the left. "The guest bathroom. She is in the guest bathroom." I moved past them. I did not run. I walked with purpose. I kept the gun in my hand. I kicked open the bathroom door. What I saw stopped my breath. Jasmine was slumped in the bathtub. She was fully clothed, but her blouse was torn. Her head was lolled back against the porcelain, her mouth-open eyes rolled back. But it was her arms that made my stomach turn. Her sleeves were pushed up. Her beautiful brown skin was covered in fresh bruises and distinct red puncture marks. Needle marks. Jasmine. I holstered the gun and ran to her. I pulled her out of the tub. Her skin was cold, clammy. Her pulse was thready and weak. "What did you do to her?" I roared. Patricia appeared in the doorway behind me. She had regained some of her composure now that the violence had stopped. She crossed her arms, trying to look dignified despite the plaster dust in her hair. "We were trying to help her," she said, her voice sharp. "Your daughter is a junkie, Arthur. We found her shooting up in the bathroom. We were just trying to keep her safe until she sobered up. We did not want to ruin her reputation by calling an ambulance." I looked at my daughter. Jasmine was a pharmacist. She graduated top of her class. She treated her body like a temple. She did not drink. She certainly did not use intravenous drugs. "Liar," I whispered. I scooped Jasmine up in my arms. She was dead weight. "We are leaving." "You cannot take her," Patricia said, blocking the hallway. "She is in no condition to move. She needs to stay here. We are her family." I walked straight at her. My eyes burned with a fire that made her step aside instantly. "You are not her family." I said, my voice low and rough like gravel. "You are her captors, and if she does not wake up, I am coming back. And next time I won't miss the chandelier." I carried my daughter out into the rain, past the shattered door, past the cowering husband, and laid her gently in the passenger seat of my truck. I buckled her in. Her head slumped onto my shoulder. "Hang on, baby girl," I whispered, starting the engine. "Daddy is here." I peeled out of the driveway, leaving deep ruts in their perfect lawn. I dialed 911 as I drove. "This is Arthur Robinson. I have a female victim, early 30s, non-responsive, possible overdose. I am en route to Mercy General. Have a trauma team ready." I looked at Jasmine's pale face illuminated by the dashboard lights. The needle marks on her arm looked angry and red. Patricia's words echoed in my head. Junkie. They were setting her up. I knew it in my bones. They were painting a narrative. But why? Why now? Then I remembered the safe in my house, the papers I had seen years ago, the trust fund Jasmine would access when she turned 35. That was 3 months away. I pressed the accelerator. The old Ford roared, responding to my anger. They did not just want to hurt her. They wanted to discredit her. They wanted to erase her. But they forgot one thing. She was a Robinson. And Robinsons do not break easily. And when we do, we rebuild ourselves stronger than before. I reached for my phone again and dialed a number I had not called in years. Sarah Jenkins, the toughest shark of a lawyer in Chicago. It was 3 a.m. She answered on the second ring. Sarah, it is Arthur. I need you at Mercy General, now. Bring a notary and bring your war paint. We have a situation. Arthur, is everything okay? No, Sarah. I just declared war on the Kensington family. And I intend to win. I hung up and focused on the road. The rain was letting up, but the storm was just beginning. The fluorescent lights of the Mercy General emergency room hummed with a sound that grated against my nerves like a dentist drill. I burst through the automatic doors, carrying Jasmine in my arms. My boots squeaked on the pristine linoleum floor, leaving a trail of mud and rainwater. I must have looked like a nightmare to the triage nurse sitting behind the glass partition. I was soaked to the bone, wearing a faded Carhartt jacket stained with oil and sawdust, and my face was twisted in a mask of pure panic. "Help her!" I shouted. "She is not breathing right." The nurse looked up. She did not see a terrified father holding his only child. She saw a large black man. She saw a threat. She reached for the phone before she even looked at my daughter. "Sir, you need to lower your voice," she said, her hand hovering over the panic button. "Just get a doctor, damn it." Behind me, the automatic doors slid open again. Patricia and Hunter ran in. They looked like royalty who had taken a wrong turn. Patricia was clutching her expensive robe around her, sobbing theatrically, while Hunter looked pale and shaken, but undeniably respectable in his suburban pajamas. "He took her." Patricia screamed, pointing a manicured finger at me. "He broke into our home and kidnapped her. Please help us." The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. It was a shift I had felt 1,000 times in my 70 years. It is the shift that happens when the world decides who the villain is based on the color of his skin and the cost of his clothes. "Security!" the nurse yelled. 2 burly guards materialized from the corners of the waiting room. They did not ask questions. They did not look at the unconscious woman in my arms. They went straight for me. "Put her down," one of them barked, reaching for his belt. "I am her father," I growled, tightening my grip on Jasmine. "She needs help. Put her down, or we will put you down." Hunter stepped forward, playing the role of the concerned husband perfectly. "Just give her to the doctors, Arthur. Stop making this worse." I looked at the doctors rushing out with a gurney. I had no choice. I laid Jasmine onto the stretcher. Her arm fell limp over the side, revealing the angry red needle marks. As soon as my hands were empty, the guards were on me. One grabbed my left arm, twisting it behind my back with unnecessary force. The other slammed me against the wall. I felt the cold steel of handcuffs snap around my wrists. I did not fight them. I knew that if I fought, I would give them the excuse they wanted. I pressed my cheek against the cold plaster and watched the doctors wheel my daughter away. Patricia stood there weeping into a tissue while the nurses comforted her. I was the monster in the corner. 10 minutes later, 2 police officers walked in. They were young, white. They walked straight past me and went to Patricia. Of course they did. "Officer, thank God you are here," Patricia said, her voice trembling with a practiced fragility. This man is Jasmine's estranged father. He has always been unstable." I stood there handcuffed to a metal bench, listening to her weave a web of lies so thick it felt like it was choking me. "He demanded money from us last week," Patricia continued, wiping her eyes. "He said if we did not pay him, he would hurt us. Tonight he smashed our front door down. He was raving like a lunatic, and my wife Hunter added, stepping in at the right moment. She has been struggling, postpartum depression. She got hooked on painkillers. We have been trying to help her detox at home privately. He dragged her out of the house. He could have killed her in that condition." The police officer nodded, taking notes. He looked at me with disgust. It was a look that said he had already solved the case in his head. A junkie daughter, A violent, estranged father looking for a payout, a nice, wealthy family trying to pick up the pieces. It was a perfect story. The officer walked over to me. He rested his hand on his belt. "Mr. Robinson, I am going to uncuff you, but you are going to leave this hospital immediately. If you do not, you will be arrested for trespassing and assault. I am not leaving my daughter." I said, my voice low and steady. "She is an adult," the officer said, "and her husband is here. He is her next of kin. You have no rights here, especially after what you pulled tonight. They did this to her. Look at her arms. She is not an addict." The officer sighed. "Sir, we have a statement from the family. We have witness accounts of your violent entry. Do not make me throw you in a cell. Go home." He reached for his key to unlock the cuffs, expecting me to be grateful. He expected me to run away with my tail between my legs. He expected me to be the scared old man who knew his place. I did not move. I stared him dead in the eye. "Officer, before you kick me out, I suggest you check my daughter's bra." The officer paused. "Excuse me." I said, "Check her bra. The left cup. Inside the lining." Hunter's face went white. He stepped forward. "This is ridiculous. He is a pervert. Get him out of here." But the officer hesitated. There was something in my voice, the weight of 70 years of building foundations that did not crumble. "Check it," I said. "Or explain to your sergeant why you ignored evidence." The officer looked at the doctor who was standing nearby. The doctor nodded and walked over to where Jasmine lay behind the curtain. We waited in silence. The only sound was the beeping of the heart monitor and the nervous, shallow breathing of my son-in-law. A moment later, the doctor returned. He was holding a folded piece of paper. It was warm from my daughter's body. He handed it to the officer. The officer unfolded it. He read it once, then he read it again. His eyebrows shot up. He looked at Hunter, then at Patricia, then finally at me. "What is this?" Hunter demanded, his voice cracking. The officer held up the document. It was a notarized medical power of attorney dated 6 months ago. It stated in clear legal terms that in the event of incapacitation, Arthur Robinson was to have sole decision-making power over Jasmine Kensington's medical care, superseding any spouse or other family member. I remember the day she gave it to me. She had come to my house terrified but refusing to say why. She made me promise to keep it a secret. She sewed it into her favorite bra, the one she wore when she felt she needed armor. That document, the officer said, looking at Hunter, changes everything. "Mr. Robinson is the legal decision-maker here, not you." Patricia gasped. "That is a forgery. She would never sign that." "It is notarized," the officer said, "and the stamp is real." "Officer, remove these cuffs," I said, "and remove these people from my daughter's room." The officer unlocked the handcuffs. I rubbed my wrists, staring at Patricia. Her mask had slipped just for a second, revealing the viper underneath. But she recovered quickly. "Fine," she hissed. "But this is not over. We will see what the blood tests say." As if on cue, the doctor cleared his throat. He was holding a clipboard, looking grave. "Mr. Robinson, since you are the medical proxy, I can share the preliminary toxicology results with you." "Go ahead," I said, stepping between Hunter and the bed. "Your daughter has a lethal amount of opioids in her system, heroin specifically, and high levels of sedatives." "See?" Hunter cried out, throwing his hands up. "I told you, she is an addict." I tried to stop her. I tried to get the needle away, but she was too strong. He buried his face in his hands, sobbing loudly. It was a performance worthy of an Oscar. The nurses looked at him with sympathy. Even the officer seemed to soften. The narrative was setting in like concrete. The grieving husband, the junkie wife. Suddenly a low moan came from the bed. Jasmine shifted. Her eyes fluttered open. They were glassy, unfocused. She looked around the room wildly, her gaze darting from the doctor to Hunter to me. "Jasmine, baby," I said, leaning in close. "It is Dad. You are safe." She looked at me. I waited for the recognition. I waited for her to reach for my hand. Instead, she screamed. It was a blood-curdling sound of pure terror. She scrambled backward on the bed, tearing at her IV lines. "Who are you?" she shrieked, her eyes wide with panic. "Get away from me. I do not know you. Jasmine, it is me. It is your father." "No," she yelled, kicking at me. "I do not know you." Hunter, help me. Why is this man here?" My heart shattered into a million pieces. I froze, my hand hovering in the air. She looked at me with the eyes of a stranger. Hunter stepped forward, a smug look of triumph on his face, hidden quickly behind a mask of concern. It is the drugs, he said, sadly shaking his head. She gets confused. She gets paranoid. See, officer. She is terrified of him. Patricia stepped up beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder. See what we have been dealing with. It is a tragedy. I looked at my daughter cowering in the corner of the hospital bed, terrified of the one person who would die to protect her. The drugs were not just killing her body. They were stealing her mind. They were erasing me. And in that moment, I realized this was not just about money. This was about total annihilation. They did not just want to kill her. They wanted to turn her into something she was not, so no one would ask questions when she finally died. I stepped back, my hands raised, showing her I was not a threat. I swallowed the bile rising in my throat. I am not leaving, I said to the room. I do not care if she remembers me or not. I am staying right here. The officer looked at the power of attorney in his hand, then at the hysterical woman in the bed. He can stay, the officer said. The paper is legal. I pulled a chair to the far corner of the room and sat down. I watched Hunter comfort my daughter, the man who had put the needle in her arm now playing her savior. My blood ran cold. This was going to be a long night. I apologize for the confusion. You are absolutely right. I repeated part 1 instead of moving forward. Here is part 3, The Taste of Madness, written specifically according to your outline and requirements. The air in the hospital room felt heavy and suffocating, like the air before a thunderstorm. I sat in the corner, my eyes fixed on my daughter. For an hour, she had been drifting in and out of consciousness, mumbling words that made no sense. Then suddenly she sat bolt upright. Her eyes were wide, screaming with a terror that no human being should ever have to feel. The walls, she screamed, pointing a trembling finger at the sterile white paint. The walls are melting. They are coming for me. Do not let them take me back to the basement. She clawed at her own skin, scratching at the invisible bugs she thought were crawling on her. It broke my heart. This was Jasmine, my Jasmine. The woman who could memorize complex chemical formulas in her sleep. The woman who stood tall against anyone. Now she looked like a frightened child trapped in a nightmare she could not wake up from. Hunter jumped up from his chair. He rushed to her side, but he did not hug her. He held her wrists down, pinning her to the mattress. Shh, baby, he said, his voice loud enough for the nurses to hear. It is the withdrawal. You are hallucinating again, just like at home. He looked over his shoulder at the doctor who had just entered the room. A tall, thin man with wire-rimmed glasses who looked at me like I was a piece of furniture that needed to be thrown out. Doctor, she is having another episode, Hunter said. She is hurting herself. Please, you have to sedate her. Patricia, who had been pacing the room like a caged tiger, stopped and nodded vigorously. Yes, doctor, look at her. She is suffering. Please give her something strong. Haloperidol, maybe. It is what worked before. I froze. Haloperidol. That was an antipsychotic, a heavy one. It was not used for opioid withdrawal. Why would a mother-in-law know the specific name of an antipsychotic drug unless she had been using it? The doctor nodded, checking a chart. I agree. She is a danger to herself and others. Nurse, prepare 5 milligrams of haloperidol and 2 of lorazepam. IM injection. The nurse moved to the cabinet. I saw the glint of the needle. I stood up. My chair scraped loudly against the floor. No, I said. My voice filled the room. The doctor turned to me, annoyed. Mr. Robinson, your daughter is in a state of acute psychosis. This is standard protocol. I walked over to the bed. I put my large, calloused hand over the injection site on Jasmine's arm, blocking the nurse. I said, no, you are not putting that in her. Not until I know exactly what is already in her system. The doctor's face turned red. Sir, you are interfering with medical treatment. I can have you removed. Try it, I growled. I towered over him. I let him see the 40 years of construction sites in my eyes, the 40 years of dealing with men much tougher than him. You touch her with that needle and I will sue you for everything you own. I will take your license, your house, and your pension. I have medical power of attorney, and I am refusing this treatment. Patricia stepped forward, her silk robe swishing. This is ridiculous. He wants her to suffer. He enjoys seeing her like this. I ignored her. I pulled out my phone. I dialed a number I had memorized. BioHealth Independent Labs. They were expensive, they were private, and they were fast. I need a full toxicology team at Mercy General Room 402. I said into the phone, my eyes never leaving Hunter's face. Hair follicle, fingernail clippings, blood. I want a full panel. Heavy metals, antipsychotics, poisons, everything. I am paying cash. I hung up. Hunter looked like he was going to be sick. Patricia's face went from red to a ghostly white. "You cannot bring outside people in here," she sputtered. "This is a hospital. It is against policy. Actually, it is his right." The voice came from the doorway. We all turned. Sarah Jenkins stood there. She was wearing a sharp navy suit, holding a briefcase that looked like it could double as a weapon. She was 5'2", but she had more presence than everyone else in the room combined. "I am Sarah Jenkins, Mr. Robinson's legal counsel," she said, walking into the room. She handed a card to the doctor. "Under the Patient Bill of Rights, Section 4, Paragraph 2, a medical proxy has the right to request independent verification of diagnosis and testing at their own expense. If you deny this right, I will file an injunction within the hour, and I will name you personally in the malpractice suit." The doctor looked at the card. He looked at Sarah. He looked at me. He capped the needle. "Fine," he spat. "But if she hurts herself, it is on your head." He stormed out. The nurse followed him, casting a sympathetic look at Jasmine. Patricia turned on Sarah. "Who do you think you are barging in here? I am the person who is going to make sure you follow the law, Mrs. Kensington," Sarah said calmly. "Now I suggest you sit down and be quiet. Or you can leave." Hunter sat down heavily. He looked terrified. He kept glancing at Jasmine's purse, which was sitting on the chair next to him. He was guarding it. He had been guarding it all night. The independent lab team arrived 20 minutes later. They were efficient. They ignored the tension in the room and went straight to work. They clipped a piece of Jasmine's hair. They took scrapings from under her nails. They drew blood. While they worked, the room was chaotic. Patricia was on her phone arguing with someone in a hushed voice. Sarah was supervising the technicians, making sure everything was sealed and labeled correctly. I watched Hunter. He was distracted, watching the technicians with wide, fearful eyes. He stood up to pace, leaving the purse on the chair. This was my chance. I moved. I did not walk fast. I just drifted like I was going to the window. As I passed the chair, I snagged the purse. It was heavy. I turned my back to the room, shielding my actions with my broad shoulders. I opened it. Inside were the usual things: wallet, keys, lipstick. But buried at the bottom, wrapped in a tissue, was a small orange pill bottle. I pulled it out. The label had been ripped off. Inside was a fine white powder, not pills. It looked like someone had crushed them. I glanced around. No one was looking at me. I wet the tip of my pinky finger and dipped it into the powder. I touched it to my tongue. The taste hit me instantly. It was not the chemical bitterness of aspirin or the metallic tang of opioids. It was a specific cloying bitterness that lingered at the back of the throat. I knew that taste. I grew up in the projects in the 70s. I had seen what happened to people who got dosed with the Haldol hammer to keep them quiet. It was haloperidol, but this was concentrated. This was not medicine. This was a chemical lobotomy. They were not treating her addiction. They were driving her insane. They were poisoning her brain to make her unreliable, to make her pliable, to make her sign whatever they wanted. Rage, hot and blinding, surged through me. I wanted to turn around and wrap my hands around Hunter's neck. I wanted to squeeze until the truth popped out of his eyes. But I stopped myself. Violence would only get me arrested, and Jasmine needed me free. I slipped the bottle into my jacket pocket. This was evidence. This was the nail in their coffin. I turned back around. Hunter was sitting down again, reaching for the purse. He froze when he realized it had moved. He looked up at me. I stared back, my face a mask of stone. "Looking for something, Hunter?" I asked. He swallowed hard. "No, just checking on Jasmine." The lab technicians packed up their gear. "We will have rush results in 12 hours, Mr. Robinson," the lead tech said. "Thank you," I said. Patricia stood up, smoothing her silk robe. She looked regained her composure. "Well, this has been a waste of time and money," she sniffed. "We are going to the cafeteria. Hunter, come with me." Hunter looked at me, then at his mother. He looked like a dog deciding which master to fear more. He chose his mother. They walked out, leaving me alone with Sarah and Jasmine. Sarah let out a breath she had been holding. "Arthur, you were right. The vibe in this room, it is toxic." I pulled the pill bottle from my pocket. "Sarah, get this to a lab. Separate from the blood work. I need to know exactly what is in it." Sarah took the bottle using a handkerchief. No fingerprints. Smart. What do you think it is? I think they are poisoning her, Sarah. I think they are trying to cook her brain. Sarah's eyes hardened. If that is true, we are looking at attempted murder, Arthur, not just fraud. We sat in silence for a moment, watching Jasmine's chest rise and fall. Her breathing was shallow, but the hallucinations seemed to have stopped for now. Then my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text message. Unknown number. I opened it. The message was short, simple, but it made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. Basement. Check the wall behind the wine cabinet. I showed it to Sarah. Who is this? She whispered. I do not know, I said, looking at the door where Hunter and Patricia had exited. But someone on the inside knows the truth, and they just gave us the map. I stood up. Sarah, stay with Jasmine. Do not let them near her alone. Not for a second. Where are you going? I checked the weight of the Colt 1911 in my waistband. I am going back to the house, I said. I am going to see what is behind that wine cabinet. Arthur that is breaking and entering. If they catch you... They won't catch me, I said, opening the door. Because they are too busy trying to cover their tracks here. And Sarah, if I am not back by sunrise, raise hell. I walked out of the hospital into the cold night air. The rain had stopped, but the ground was still wet. I got into my truck and turned the key. The engine roared to life, a beast waking up. I was going back into the belly of the beast, and this time I was going to tear it apart from the inside out. The Kensington estate loomed in the darkness like a mausoleum built of stone and greed. I parked my truck a block away under the heavy canopy of an old oak tree to keep it hidden. The rain had stopped, but the air was thick with mist and the smell of wet earth. I approached the house on foot, moving through the shadows like a ghost. I had spent 40 years on construction sites, and I knew how to move without being seen. I knew where the blind spots were. I did not go to the front door this time. The shattered frame I had left behind would be boarded up or watched. Instead, I circled around to the detached 3-car garage. It was a sleek, modern structure that housed Hunter's toys. I crept up to the keypad mounted on the brick pillar. I held my breath. This was a gamble. Jasmine had told me years ago that she set the auxiliary codes for the house systems. She used the only date that meant peace to her. My mother's birthday, August 24th. I punched in the numbers, 0824. The keypad beeped green. A soft mechanical whirring sound followed as the side service door clicked unlock. I let out a breath I did not know I was holding. My daughter was fighting for her life in a hospital bed, but a piece of her was here guiding me in. I slipped inside. The garage smelled of tire rubber and expensive wax. I walked past a Porsche and a vintage Mercedes, both gathering dust. I did not care about the cars. I cared about the door that led to the mudroom connecting the garage to the main house. I tried the handle. Unlocked. Arrogance. They were so arrogant they did not even lock their internal doors because they thought the gate and the neighborhood watch would protect them. I stepped into the house. It was silent, the kind of silence that feels heavy, like the air in a tomb. I stood in the mudroom listening. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen and the ticking of a grandfather clock in the hallway. Hunter and Patricia were still at the hospital putting on their show. I had the castle to myself. I moved quickly. I pulled my phone out and checked the text message again. Basement. Checked the wall behind the wine cabinet. I knew where the wine cellar was. I had been given a tour once when Hunter was trying to impress me with his collection of vintage reds. I made my way down the hallway, my boots making no sound on the runner rugs. I found the heavy door to the cellar and opened it. Cool air rushed up to meet me, smelling of cork and dust. I descended the stairs. The wine cellar was impressive. Floor-to-ceiling racks of mahogany filled with bottles that cost more than my monthly food budget. I scanned the room. On the far wall there was a massive display cabinet holding Magnum bottles. It looked solid, immovable. But I am an engineer. I look at structures and I see how they work. I walked up to the cabinet. I looked at the floor. There were faint scrape marks on the stone tiles, barely visible unless you were looking for them. Scrape marks that formed an arc. This was a door. I felt along the edge of the shelving. There was a hidden latch behind one of the bottles. I triggered it. With a low groan of metal on metal, the entire cabinet swung outward. The smell hit me first. It was not the smell of wine. It was the smell of bleach, unwashed bodies, and fear. It was a smell I recognized from the worst parts of the city, the places where people went to disappear. I stepped into the hidden room. It was small, maybe 10 feet by 10 feet. The walls were lined with egg crate foam padding, soundproofing. This was not a panic room. This was a cell. In the corner, there was a mattress on the floor, no sheets, just a stained pillow and a gray wool blanket. I knelt beside it. There were dark, rusty stains on the mattress. Dried blood. My stomach churned. I looked at the wall above the mattress. There was a heavy iron ring bolted into the concrete. A chain hung from it, ending in a padded leather cuff. It looked like something you would use for a large dog. I ran my hand over the cuff. It was small enough for a woman's wrist. Rage, unlike anything I had ever felt, surged through my veins. It was cold and sharp. They had chained my daughter here. They had treated her like an animal. This was their detox program. This was their care. I looked around the room, searching for anything that could help me nail them to the wall. I lifted the corner of the mattress. Underneath, tucked between the foam and the floor, was a small leather-bound book. Jasmine's journal. I opened it. Her handwriting was shaky, jagged spikes of ink that spoke of tremors and fear. October 12th. The walls are moving again. Hunter brought me soup. It tasted bitter. I spit it out when he left. He just watches me eat. He smiles, but his eyes are dead. October 15th. I cannot remember Zoe's face. Why can I not remember my baby? They say I am sick. They say I tried to hurt her. I would never hurt her. Why am I chained up? October 18th. I heard them talking upstairs. The policy. They were talking about a policy. 5 million. I have to get out. I have to tell Dad. I closed the book. My hands were shaking. Not from fear, but from the effort it took not to scream. They were gaslighting her, poisoning her, and waiting for her to die. I shoved the journal into my jacket pocket. I had the evidence of the cruelty. Now I needed the motive. I left the basement, swinging the false door shut. I climbed the stairs 2 at a time. I headed straight for the second floor to Hunter's home office. The office was a shrine to Hunter's ego. Architectural awards that looked bought rather than earned lined the walls. A massive mahogany desk dominated the room. Behind the desk on the wall was a painting of a hunt scene. I pulled the painting down. There it was. A wall safe. Digital keypad. Reinforced steel. Top of the line. I did not have the combination. But I had something better. I had patience, and I had the stethoscope I had swiped from the supply cart at the hospital while the nurse was distracted. I put the earpieces in. I pressed the diaphragm of the stethoscope against the safe door right next to the locking mechanism. I closed my eyes. I turned the digital dial slowly. It was electronic, but there was a solenoid inside a magnetic coil that engaged the bolt. When you hit the right number, the magnetic field shifted just slightly. It made a sound, a tiny, almost imperceptible click that you could not hear with the naked ear. I was 70 years old. My knees ached. My back hurt, but my hands were steady as rock. Click. First number. I spun the dial the other way. I focused on the sound, blocking out the storm outside, blocking out the image of my daughter chained in the basement. Click. Second number. It took 3 minutes. 3 minutes of absolute focus. Click. Third number. The light on the safe turned green. The handle engaged. I turned it, and the heavy door swung open. I expected to see stacks of cash, maybe jewelry, but the safe was almost empty of valuables. Instead, it was stuffed with papers. I pulled them out and spread them on the desk. It was a graveyard of financial ruin. First, there were the foreclosure notices. This house, this mansion that Patricia was so proud of, was in foreclosure. They were 3 months away from the sheriff kicking them to the curb. It had been refinanced 3 times. There was no equity left. Then there were the gambling debts, markers from casinos in Vegas and Atlantic City, promissory notes to people with names that did not appear on bank letterheads. Hunter owed over $2 million. And then I found the smoking gun. It was a thick document bound in a blue folder, a life insurance policy. The insured was Jasmine Robinson Kensington. The beneficiary was Hunter Kensington. The payout was $5 million. I flipped to the back pages, scanning the fine print. My eyes landed on a clause that had been highlighted in yellow marker. In the event of accidental death due to overdose or suicide after a period of 2 years from the policy start date, full benefits shall be paid. I looked at the date on the policy. It had been signed 2 years and 1 month ago. The realization hit me like a physical blow. They had been planning this for years. They had waited. They had waited for the contestability period to end. They had waited until the policy would pay out for a suicide or an overdose. And then they had started poisoning her. They did not just want her dead, they needed her dead. Jasmine was not a wife to Hunter. She was a lottery ticket. She was the only thing standing between him and total ruin. I took the papers. All of them. I shoved them into my jacket along with the journal. I had everything I needed. I had the weapon, I had the motive, I had the proof. I turned to leave. I needed to get back to the hospital. I needed to show this to the police. But then I froze. A picture frame on Hunter's desk caught my eye. It was a photo of my granddaughter Zoe. She was smiling, missing her 2 front teeth. Zoe. In the chaos of the night and the rush to save Jasmine, I had not seen Zoe. I ran out of the office and down the hall to Zoe's bedroom. The door was painted a soft pink. I pushed it open. The room was empty. Not just empty of people, empty of life. The bed was stripped. The closet was open and bare. The toys were gone from the shelves. It looked like no one had lived there for days. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced through my anger. Where was my granddaughter? I pulled out my phone to call Sarah, but before I could dial, it rang in my hand. It was a video call. From Hunter. I answered. Hunter's face filled the screen. He was sitting in his car, the interior dark. He looked frantic, sweaty, and dangerous. "I see you, Arthur," he said, his voice shaking. "I see you on the nanny cam in my office. You found the safe. Good for you." "Where is Zoe Hunter?" I demanded. He laughed. It was a manic, high-pitched sound. "She is safe. She is far away, and she stays that way." He leaned closer to the camera, his eyes wide. "If you do not drop the medical power of attorney by 8 a.m. tomorrow, if you do not bring Jasmine back to this house, you will never see Zoe again. I will disappear with her, Arthur, and I will tell the courts you are a violent, senile old man who attacked us." "You touch a hair on her head." "Tick-tock, Arthur," he hissed. "You have 5 hours." The screen went black. I stood in the empty pink room, the silence of the house screaming around me. They had taken my daughter's mind. Now they had taken my granddaughter. They thought this would break me. They thought I would crumble. I put the phone in my pocket. I touched the Colt 1911. I was not going to the police. Not yet. Hunter was desperate, and desperate men did dangerous things when cornered by the law. I needed to find Zoe myself, and I knew exactly who to call. "Old Mike," I whispered to the empty room. "Wake up, brother. We have work to do." The silence in the hallway felt heavy, like a physical weight pressing down on my chest. I stood outside the door, painted a soft pastel pink. It was the only door in this mausoleum of a house that held any warmth. Zoe's room, my granddaughter's sanctuary. The adrenaline that had fueled me through the basement and the office began to curdle into a cold, sick dread. In my rush to save Jasmine, I had assumed Zoe was safe. I had assumed even monsters like Hunter and Patricia would not involve a 5-year-old child in their madness. I pushed the door open. It should have creaked. It should have revealed a mess of dolls and coloring books. It should have smelled like strawberry shampoo and crayons. Instead, it revealed nothing. The room was stripped. Bare. The white canopy bed was gone. The dresser with the hand-painted knobs was gone. The bookshelf I had built for her 2nd birthday was gone. There was nothing left but the indentations in the plush carpet where the furniture had stood. I walked into the center of the room. My boots left dirt on the carpet, but I did not care. I spun around looking for a forgotten toy, a sock, anything. There was nothing. The closet door was open, revealing empty hangers. The walls were bare, the posters of unicorns and stars ripped down, leaving only tiny holes in the plaster. This was not a hasty departure. This was an evacuation. They had moved her days ago, maybe weeks. While they were poisoning my daughter, while they were planning my murder, they had systematically erased my granddaughter from this house. My knees felt weak. I reached out to the wall to steady myself. A terrible image flashed in my mind. Zoe scared and alone, calling for her mother, calling for her pop-pop. Where was she? Was she even alive? Panic is a dangerous thing for a man my age. It constricts the heart. It constricts. It clouds the mind. I forced myself to breathe. In through the nose, out through the mouth. I needed to think like an engineer. Structural failure. Identify the stress point. Reinforce. The stress point was Hunter. As if summoned by my thought, the phone in my pocket vibrated against my leg. It was a jarring buzz in the dead silence of the empty room. I pulled it out. The screen lit up with an incoming video call. It was Hunter. I stared at the screen for a second, my thumb hovering over the button. He knew. He was watching me right now. I swiped answer. Hunter's face filled the screen. He was sitting in the driver's seat of a car illuminated only by the dashboard lights. His skin looked green and sickly in the digital glow. His eyes were wide, manic, darting around as if he expected ghosts to jump out of the shadows. "I see you, Arthur," he hissed. His voice was tinny coming through the phone speaker. "I see you standing in her room. You look confused, old man. Are you looking for something?" "Where is she, Hunter?" I said. My voice was low, a rumble from deep in my chest. "If you have hurt her." "Hurt her?" He let out a laugh that sounded like glass breaking. "Why would I hurt my own leverage? She is my insurance policy, Arthur. And right now, she is the only reason you are not going to call the police." He moved the camera. For a second, I saw a flash of the back seat. A small figure curled up under a blanket. A tuft of curly black hair. "Zoe. She is asleep," Hunter said, turning the camera back to his sweating face. "She is very tired, Arthur. We have been driving for a long time. She misses her mommy. Bring her back. Now." "No. You listen to me, old man. You listen very carefully because I am only going to say this once." He leaned in close to the phone. I could see the beads of sweat on his upper lip. I could see the desperation etching lines into his forehead. "You are going to leave my house. You are going to go back to that hospital. And you are going to tell those doctors that you made a mistake. You are going to revoke that power of attorney. You are going to sign Jasmine's discharge papers, and you are going to hand her over to my mother. And if I do not..." Hunter smiled. It was a smile devoid of humanity. A smile of a cornered rat baring its teeth. "If you do not, Arthur. If you call the cops. If you show anyone those papers you found in my safe. If you do anything other than what I say, you will receive a package in the mail." He paused, letting the silence stretch. "It will be small, Arthur. Just a little box. Inside will be Zoe's finger. The little pinky finger she uses to pinky promise." The blood roared in my ears. The world narrowed down to his face on that small screen. "You are a dead man, Hunter," I whispered. "Do not test me," he screamed, losing his composure. "I have nothing left, Arthur. You ruined everything. The house is gone. The money is gone. This is my only way out. You have until 8 a.m. If Jasmine is not in my mother's custody by 8 a.m., I will start sending pieces of her back to you." The screen went black. I stood there in the dark, empty room staring at the phone. My hand was shaking. Not from fear, but from a rage so pure, so hot it felt like molten lead in my veins. He threatened my blood. He threatened a child. I put the phone in my pocket. I took a deep breath. I could not call the police. Hunter was unstable. If he saw blue lights, if he heard sirens, he might snap. He might hurt her just to prove a point. He was desperate, and desperate men are unpredictable. I could not risk Zoe's life on a police negotiator or a SWAT team that might take hours to mobilize. No. This required a different kind of response. I needed to find him. And I needed to find him now. I walked out of the house. I did not bother closing the door. I walked back to my truck, the rain starting to fall again, a cold drizzle that matched the cold in my heart. I climbed into the cab and slammed the door. I reached for my burner phone, the one I kept for business that did not need to be on the books. I dialed a number I had not used in 5 years. It rang once, twice. "Yeah." The voice on the other end was rough like sandpaper. "Mike, it is Arthur." There was a pause, then a sound of a chair shifting. "Arthur Robinson, it is 3 in the morning. You better be calling to tell me you won the lottery. I need you, Mike. I need the system." The line went quiet. Old Mike was not just a friend. We served together in the Corps back in the 70s. After the war, Mike went into intelligence, signal processing, surveillance. When he retired, he took his skills private. He lived off the grid in a warehouse district surrounded by servers and radio equipment that could track a whisper across the state line. "What is the situation, Arthur? My son-in-law took my granddaughter. He is threatening to hurt her. He is on the run. I need to find him." "Do you have a number?" "Yes. Give it to me." I recited Hunter's cell number. Hold on. I heard the sound of keys clacking furiously, the sound of digital handshakes being made. Mike did not ask for a warrant. He did not ask for permission. He just worked. I sat in the dark truck listening to the rain drumming on the roof. Every second that ticked by was a second Zoe was in danger, a second closer to 8 a.m. He is smart, Arthur, Mike said, his voice focused. He has his GPS disabled. He is bouncing off towers. Can you get a fix? I can triangulate him based on signal strength and tower handoffs. It won't be pinpoint, but it will get you close. Keep talking. He is desperate, Mike. He says he will hurt her. I heard the anger in Mike's silence. He had grandkids too. I am into the carrier's back end, Mike muttered, bypassing the privacy protocols. Got him. He is moving. Heading west on Interstate 88, west, toward the farmlands, toward the empty spaces where no one could hear a child scream. He just passed the toll booth at mile marker 40, Mike said. He is moving fast, 80 miles an hour. Keep tracking him, Mike. Send the coordinates to my phone. Do not lose him. I never lose a target, Arthur. Go get him. I threw the phone onto the passenger seat. I started the engine. The old V8 roared to life. I shifted into gear and stomped on the gas. The tires spun on the wet grass, tearing up more of Patricia's lawn before finding traction on the pavement. I was coming for you, Hunter, and God help you when I arrived. The tires of my Ford F-150 screamed against the asphalt as I merged onto the westbound highway. The rain had turned into a thick mist that swallowed the headlights of the few cars on the road. I was doing 90 miles an hour in a truck that was built for hauling lumber, not for high-speed chases. The steering wheel shook in my hands, vibrating all the way up to my shoulders, but I held it steady. I had a destination now. Old Mike had come through. The coordinates he sent pointed to a desolate stretch of farmland about 100 miles west of the city. It was an area known for failed crops and meth labs, places where people went when they did not want to be found. Mike had dug deeper while I drove. He told me the property belonged to a woman named Beatrice Vance, Patricia Kensington's estranged sister. I knew the type. Every rich family has one. The black sheep who handles the dirty laundry. The one they pay to keep quiet and do the things their manicured hands cannot touch. Hunter had not just picked a random spot. He had taken my granddaughter to a place where the law was just a suggestion. I pressed the gas pedal down until it hit the floor mat. The engine roared a mechanical protest, but it held. I watched the mile markers fly by. Every minute that passed was a minute Zoe was alone with those people. I thought about her small hand in mine. I thought about the way she laughed when I let her steer the tractor in my backyard. She was 5 years old. She should be dreaming about cartoons and playgrounds not being used as a pawn in a game of greed. My phone buzzed on the seat next to me. It was Mike again. Arthur, he said, his voice crackling over the speaker. I pulled up the satellite imagery. The property is isolated. One main house, a barn, and a lot of outbuildings, high fences. Is Hunter there? His phone signal is stationary at the house. But Arthur, be careful. Beatrice Vance has a record. Assault. Illegal breeding. She is not like Patricia. She does not call the manager. She calls her dogs. I hung up. I did not care about dogs. I did not care about records. I was a man who had walked steel beams 60 stories in the air with nothing but the wind beneath me. I knew what fear was, and I knew how to conquer it. I exited the highway onto a 2-lane road that wound through endless fields of corn stubble. The darkness was absolute out here. No streetlights. Just the moon fighting through the clouds. I killed my headlights a mile out. I drove by moonlight and memory, letting the truck roll silently toward the property line. I saw the house in the distance. It was a rotting Victorian structure, peeling paint and sagging porches. A single light burned in a downstairs window. Hunter's car was parked around the back, hidden from the road. He was there, and Zoe was inside. I parked the truck in a cluster of trees about 200 yards from the driveway. I needed a plan. I could not just kick the door in. If Hunter was desperate, he might hurt her before I could get to him. If Beatrice was armed, it could turn into a shootout with Zoe in the crossfire. No, I needed them to come to me. I needed them to run out of that house so fast they forgot to think. I reached behind the passenger seat and pulled out my old work bag. I rummaged through it until I found what I was looking for. A pair of blue coveralls with the City Gas and Electric logo on the pocket, a hard hat, and a yellow handheld multimeter that looked enough like a gas detector to fool a civilian. I pulled the coveralls on over my clothes. They smelled of old grease and hard work. I put on the hard hat. I grabbed a heavy wrench and the meter. I took a deep breath. This was it. The performance of a lifetime. I ran toward the house. I did not sneak. I ran heavy and loud. I wanted them to hear me coming. I wanted them to think the world was ending. I reached the front porch and started pounding on the door. I hit it with the wrench. Bam, bam, bam. The sound echoed like gunshots in the quiet night. Gas leak, I screamed, my voice filled with professional panic. Evacuate immediately, gas leak level 5. I saw a light flick on upstairs. I kept pounding. Open the door. We have a mainline rupture under the foundation. The whole house is going to blow. Get out now. Move, move, move. I heard shouting inside, the sound of heavy footsteps. I backed away from the door, waving the multimeter around as if I were tracking an invisible cloud of death. Get out! I roared. Do not touch any light switches. Run! The door flew open. It wasn't Hunter. It was a woman who looked like a nightmare version of Patricia. Her hair was a rat's nest of dyed blonde tangles. She was wearing a stained t-shirt and jeans, but in her arms clutched tight to her chest was Zoe. Zoe was crying, her face buried in the woman's shoulder. Go, 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 I shouted, pointing toward the road. Get away from the house. It is going to ignite. Beatrice Vance did not think. She did not question. The fear of fire is primal. She ran down the steps, her bare feet slapping against the mud. She was panting, looking back at the house with wide, terrified eyes. Where is the leak? She yelled over the wind. Under the porch, I lied, moving to intercept her. Get the child to the truck. It is not safe here. She ran toward me. She was 10 feet away when she stopped. The moonlight hit my face. She squinted. She looked at my coveralls, then at my face. Wait a minute, she said, slowing down. You are not the gas man. I know you. She tightened her grip on Zoe. Zoe looked up. She saw me. Pop, pop, she screamed, reaching out her little arms. Beatrice's eyes went wide. She realized the trick. She realized she had just carried the hostage right to the enemy. She reached into her waistband. I saw the glint of metal. A knife. She was fast, but I was a father. And a grandfather. And I had 70 years of rage propelling me forward. I dropped the wrench. I closed the distance in 2 strides. I did not go for the knife. I went for the wrist holding Zoe. I clamped my hand around Beatrice's forearm. My grip was like a vice forged from decades of bending rebar. I squeezed. She shrieked and her grip on Zoe loosened. I snatched my granddaughter with my other arm, pulling her against my chest. I spun around, putting my body between Zoe and the woman. You give her back! Beatrice screamed, lunging at me with the knife. Hunter said I could keep her if anything went wrong. I kicked her. A solid boot to the stomach that sent her sprawling into the mud. She gasped, dropping the knife and clutching her midsection. I stood over her, Zoe, clinging to my neck, burying her face in the grease-stained collar of my coveralls. I looked down at Beatrice Vance. She was trying to crawl away, but she was looking toward the barn behind the house. I followed her gaze. I heard it then, the low growling, the sound of many dogs waking up. Mike had been right. I stepped on her chest, pinning her to the ground. I leaned down, my face inches from hers. I know about the barn, Beatrice, I whispered. My voice was low and cold, deadly serious. I know about the pit bulls. I know about the fights you run on Thursday nights. Her eyes bulged. How do you? I have photos, I lied. I have dates. I have the names of the people who bet. If you do not stay down, if you make one sound, if you call Hunter, I will send everything to the state police. You will die in prison, Beatrice, for animal cruelty, for illegal gambling, for kidnapping. She froze. The fight went out of her. She knew I had her. She was a criminal, and criminals fear exposure more than violence. I stepped back, keeping my eyes on her. Stay here, I commanded. Do not move until you see my taillights disappear. I turned and ran back toward my truck. I held Zoe tight. She was shaking, sobbing into my shoulder. I got you, baby girl, I whispered. Pop Pop has got you. I reached the truck and threw open the door. I tossed the hard hat into the woods. I buckled Zoe into the passenger seat. Where is Mommy? She asked, her voice tiny and broken. Mommy is safe, I said, starting the engine. We are going to see her soon. I peeled out of the trees, hitting the road with a spray of gravel. I checked the rearview mirror. No one was following. The house remained dark. Beatrice was likely still lying in the mud, contemplating her life choices. I drove fast, putting miles between us and that house. I did not relax until we were 2 counties away. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Mike. Hunter just pinged. He is moving away from the house, heading back to the city. He thinks you are still negotiating. He did not know I had Zoe. He did not know his leverage was gone. I looked at my granddaughter sleeping fitfully in the seat next to me. I reached over and stroked her hair. We were going back to the city. But we were not going to negotiate. Hunter wanted a war. He wanted to play games with my family. Well, I was done playing. I was going to finish this, and I was going to do it in a way that would leave him with nothing. Not a penny, not a home, not a shred of dignity. I drove into the sunrise, the city skyline appearing on the horizon like a promise. I am coming for you, Hunter, I thought, and I am bringing the storm with me. The fluorescent lights of the hospital room seemed to buzz with a different frequency now. I sat in the chair next to Jasmine's bed, watching the steady rise and fall of her chest. I had been back from the farm for an hour. I had dropped Zoe off at one of my rental properties, a small, secure apartment in the city where my tenant, a retired nurse named Mrs. Higgins, was watching over her. My granddaughter was safe. But my daughter was still fighting a battle I could not fight for her. The door opened and the independent lab technician walked in. He looked tired. He was holding a thick manila envelope. Sarah stood up immediately, smoothing her skirt. "What do you have?" she asked, her voice tight with anticipation. The technician looked at me, then at Jasmine. He did not look happy. "Mr. Robinson, you were right to call us." The hospital talk screen came back positive for opioids because there were opioids in her system. But that is a red herring. It is masking the real problem. He handed the file to Sarah. She opened it and her eyes widened. "What is this?" she whispered. "Heavy metal poisoning," the technician said. "Specifically, lead and arsenic. Chronic exposure. Based on the growth bands in her hair follicles, she has been ingesting it for at least 6 months. The levels are lethal. It is a miracle she is not in a coma or dead. The hallucinations, the weakness, the confusion, it is not withdrawal, it is arsenic poisoning. My blood ran cold. They were not just doping her up to keep her compliant, they were killing her. Slowly, painfully. Arsenic, the poison of choice for cowards because it mimics natural illness." Just then, Jasmine stirred. The antidote the doctors had started administering after I showed them the preliminary field test from the pill bottle was working. Her eyelids fluttered. She groaned a low sound of pain that tore at my heart. "Dad," she whispered. I leaned in close, taking her hand. It felt frail in mine, her skin papery and thin. "I am here, baby girl. I am right here." She opened her eyes. This time they were not glassy. They were not filled with the terror of hallucination. They were clear, tired and full of pain, but clear. She looked at me, and for the first time in months, she really saw me. "Dad," she said, tears welling up in her eyes. "You came. I promised I would. I choked out. I told you if you ever needed me, I would come." She tried to sit up, but she was too weak. She gripped my hand with surprising strength. "Hunter," she rasped. "The food. It always tasted like metal, like pennies. He made me eat it. He said it was for my health. He said I was crazy when I complained." "I know, baby, I know. We have the proof now. Where is Zoe?" Her eyes darted around the room in panic. "Where is my baby? She is safe, Jasmine. She is with Mrs. Higgins. She is watching cartoons and eating ice cream. Hunter cannot touch her." Jasmine let out a sob that shook her whole body. She pulled me down into a hug, burying her face in my chest. I held her, feeling her bones through her hospital gown, feeling the fragility of her life. I had almost lost her. If I had not answered that phone, if I had not broken down that door, she would be dead. I held my daughter and I made a silent vow. The people who did this were going to burn. They were going to lose everything. But peace never lasts long in a war zone. The door to the hospital room banged open. I did not have to turn around to know who it was. The smell of expensive perfume and entitlement drifted into the room before they did. Patricia marched in her heels, clicking sharply on the linoleum. Behind her was Hunter, looking pale but determined, and behind them were 2 police officers different from the ones last night. These were older, sterner. One of them held a piece of paper with a court seal. "There he is," Patricia shouted, pointing a finger at me like a spear. "That is the man. He kidnapped my granddaughter." "Arrest him!" Hunter stepped forward, his face twisted into a mask of righteous indignation. "Where is my daughter, Arthur? What have you done with her?" I stood up slowly. I released Jasmine's hand and placed it gently on the bed. I turned to face them. I saw the confidence in their eyes. They thought they had won. They thought the law was a weapon they could wield because they were rich and white, and I was just an old black man from the wrong side of the tracks. "Officer, this man took a minor child from her home without permission," Patricia said, turning her charm on the police. "We have an emergency court order granting us temporary custody of Zoe Kensington. due to the mother's incapacitation and the grandfather's criminal behavior. The lead officer stepped forward. He was a sergeant thick around the middle with tired eyes. "Mr. Robinson," he said, his hand resting near his holster, "we have a court order here signed by a judge an hour ago. You are compelled to return the child immediately. Failure to do so constitutes kidnapping a felony." I looked at the order. It was real. They had called in favors. They had woken up a judge. They had moved heaven and earth to get their leverage back. "Where is the girl?" the sergeant asked. I stood my ground. I did not shrink. I did not apologize. "She is safe," I said, "which is more than she was in their care." "You have no right," Hunter screamed, spittle flying from his mouth. "That is my daughter. You are a violent criminal. You broke into my house. You shot my chandelier. Officer, arrest him. He is dangerous." The sergeant took out his handcuffs. "Sir, I need you to tell me where the girl is. Now, or you are going downtown." Patricia smirked. It was a small, cruel victory. She looked at Jasmine lying in the bed, and as for her, Patricia said, her voice dripping with venom, "We are transferring her to a private facility, one that can handle her addiction properly. We have the paperwork for that too. They were going to finish the job. They were going to take Jasmine away, bury her in some private clinic, and finish poisoning her, and they were going to take Zoe back to use as a pawn." Sarah stepped forward to intervene, but I held up a hand. I did not need a lawyer right now. I needed a sledgehammer. I reached for the manila envelope on the bedside table, the one the lab technician had just delivered. I did not speak. I did not argue. I simply walked past the sergeant and slammed the heavy file onto the rolling table right in front of Hunter. The sound was like a gunshot. Bam! Everyone froze. The sergeant looked at the file, then at me. "What is this?" the sergeant asked. "Read it," I said. My voice was low, dangerous, rumbling like a generator about to overload. The sergeant hesitated, then flipped the file open. He read the first page. His eyes narrowed. He flipped to the second page. He looked at the charts, the graphs, the undeniable scientific proof of attempted murder. "Arsenic," I said, my voice rising, filling the room. "Not heroin, not depression. Arsenic. 50 times the lethal limit for chronic exposure. Lead. Mercury. A cocktail of heavy metals designed to kill slowly and mimic organ failure." I turned my gaze on Hunter. He was trembling. His hands were shaking so bad he had to grab the edge of the bed to stay upright. "Who cooks the meals in your house, Hunter?" I asked. He did not answer. He stared at the floor. "I asked you a question. Who prepares the food for my daughter?" Patricia tried to intervene. "This is ridiculous. He is trying to distract you. This is about kidnapping." "Shut up," the sergeant barked. He did not look at me. He was looking at Hunter. "Answer the question, Mr. Kensington. Who cooks the meals?" I do," Hunter stammered. "I like to cook. It helps me relax." I pointed at the file. "That report says she has been ingesting arsenic for 6 months. It is in her hair. It is in her nails. It is in her blood." And it stopped the moment she was admitted to this hospital. I stepped closer to him, invading his space, forcing him to look at me. "You did not just try to gaslight her, Hunter. You did not just try to steal her money. You poisoned her. You poisoned the mother of your child." Jasmine sat up in the bed. She pointed a shaking finger at her husband. "The soup," she whispered. Her voice was weak, but it carried the weight of a death sentence. "The special soup you made me every night. You said it was a family recipe. You said I had to eat it to get my strength back. It tasted like pennies, Hunter. Why did it taste like pennies?" The room went silent. The air was sucked out of it. The narrative they had built, the story of the junkie wife and the crazy father, crumbled into dust. The sergeant looked at Hunter. The look of deference was gone. In its place was the cold, hard stare of a cop who realizes he is standing next to a monster. He closed the file. He turned to his partner. "Call the detectives," he said. "Get homicide down here. Now!" Patricia gasped. "You cannot be serious. This is a fabrication. That old man forged those documents. My son is a respected architect." "Ma'am, be quiet," the sergeant said. He turned to me. "Mr. Robinson, where is the granddaughter?" "She is with a retired nurse," I said, "at a secure location. She is safe." "Keep her there," the sergeant said. Then he turned to Hunter. "Mr. Kensington, I am going to need you to empty your pockets. You are being detained for questioning regarding the attempted murder of your wife." Hunter looked at his mother, panic in his eyes. "Mom, do something." But Patricia stepped back. I saw the calculation in her eyes, the survival instinct. She was already distancing herself. She was already figuring out how to cut him loose to save herself. I watched as the officers patted Hunter down. I watched as his arrogance drained away, leaving only a scared, pathetic man who preyed on women. But I knew this was not over. Patricia was still free, and she was the one with the money. She was the one who pulled the strings. I looked at Sarah. She nodded. She knew what I was thinking. We had won the battle, but the war for everything else, the house, the money, the future, was just beginning, and I had a few more bombs to drop. The morning sun hit the front porch of my small brick bungalow in South Chicago, but it brought no warmth. I sat at my kitchen table, a mug of black coffee steaming in front of me and a tablet propped up against the sugar bowl. The headline on the local news site screamed in bold black letters, "Violent estranged father attacks prominent architect family." I tapped the screen. The article was a masterpiece of fiction. It described me as an unstable laborer with a history of violence who had broken into the historic Kensington estate in a drug-fueled rage. It claimed I had assaulted a security guard and kidnapped my own granddaughter. There was a photo of me taken from a distance, probably at the hospital, looking disheveled and angry. Next to it was a studio portrait of Hunter and Patricia looking like saints in designer clothes. They had hired a crisis management firm. I recognized the tactics: deny, attack, and reverse the victim and offender. They were painting me as the angry black thug from the ghetto who was terrorizing a respectable white family. The comment section was already filling up with venom. People calling for my arrest. People saying I should be locked up for the safety of the community. Patricia was quoted saying, "We tried to help him. We tried to give him money, but he is just consumed by hatred. We are praying for our daughter who is currently being treated for the addiction he enabled." I took a sip of coffee. It was bitter, just how I liked it. Most men would be screaming. Most men would be calling a lawyer to sue for defamation. But I am not most men. I do not fight with words in the press. I fight with leverage. They thought they controlled the narrative because they controlled the social circles. They thought because I lived in a working-class neighborhood, I was poor. They saw my old truck and my calloused hands, and they assumed I was living check to check. They had no idea that for the last 30 years I have been the silent partner in one of the largest distressed asset funds in the Midwest. I picked up my phone. I dialed a number that very few people have. "Gary, it is Arthur." Arthur, the voice on the other end, was smooth, cultured, and instantly alert. "I saw the news this morning. Do we need to issue a statement?" "No statements, Gary. We are going shopping. I want you to pull the Kensington file, not the public one, the real one." I heard the sound of typing. "You mean the portfolio on Hunter and Patricia Kensington? I have been tracking it since you asked me to 6 months ago." "It is a mess, Arthur. They are underwater on everything. The main estate is leveraged to the hilt. They have a second and a third mortgage. They have not paid property taxes in 2 years. Who holds the paper? First National holds the primary. A private equity firm called Cerberus holds the secondary notes. Buy them." There was a pause on the line. "All of them, Arthur. That is a lot of exposure. The assets are depreciating." I did not ask for an investment analysis, Gary. I said buy them. Call the risk manager at First National. Tell them you have a cash buyer willing to take the non-performing Kensington portfolio off their books for 60 cents on the dollar. They will bite. They have been trying to offload that toxic debt for months. And the secondary notes. Buy those too. Offer 50 cents. Cash wire today. Arthur, this is going to cost you nearly $2 million in liquid capital. Do it. And Gary, I want the car loans too, specifically the Porsche and the Mercedes. Buy the notes from the leasing company. Understood. I can have the paperwork executed by noon. Good. Once we own the paper, call the note, accelerate the debt. They are in default. I want immediate repayment in full. And if they cannot pay, then we foreclose. Immediately. I hung up the phone. I looked back at the tablet at the smiling face of Patricia Kensington. She thought she was untouchable because she had friends at the country club. She did not realize that her entire life was built on a foundation of debt and that I just bought the mortgage. I stood up and walked to the window. I looked out at my street. The houses were modest, but they were owned by the people who lived in them. My neighbors were steelworkers, teachers, and nurses. They paid their bills. They did not pretend to be something they were not. I had made my fortune doing exactly what I was doing today. Buying the mistakes of arrogant people. In the 80s, when the economy tanked and white flight left huge swathes of Chicago empty, I bought apartment buildings for pennies. I fixed them up myself. I rented them out at fair prices. I reinvested every dime. I did not buy fancy cars. I did not move to the suburbs. I stayed right here and I built an empire that nobody could see. I was the invisible landlord, the ghost investor. And now I was the owner of the Kensington estate. I checked my watch. It was 10 in the morning. Hunter had been released on bail 2 hours ago. His mother had posted the bond, putting up the last bit of equity she had in a vacation rental she owned. They were probably feeling invincible right now. They thought they had weathered the storm. They thought they could spin the story, make the charges disappear, and go back to their lives. They were wrong. I poured another cup of coffee and waited. The financial world moves fast when you have cash. By 11:30, my phone buzzed. It was Gary. "It is done, Arthur. You own the debt. You are the lien holder on the estate, the cars, and maxed-out credit lines. The transfer is complete. Execute the acceleration clauses, Gary. Shut them down. With pleasure." I sat back. I imagined the digital signals racing through the banking networks, flags being raised on accounts, credit limits dropping to zero. It was a silent, invisible violence, but it was more devastating than any punch I could throw. At 12:30, Hunter Kensington walked into Le Jardin, one of the most expensive French restaurants in the downtown district. He was not alone. He was with a woman who was definitely not my daughter. She was young, blonde, and looked expensive. I knew he was there because I had Mike tracking his phone. I also knew he was there because Hunter was a creature of habit and arrogance. He had just been arrested for attempted murder, released on bail, and his first move was to go have a $300 lunch to prove to himself that he was still a big shot. I drove my truck downtown and parked across the street. I watched through the window. Hunter was laughing, drinking wine, acting like he did not have a care in the world. He was celebrating. He thought he had beaten the charges. He thought his mother's lawyers would fix everything. He waved the waiter over for the check. He pulled out his sleek black credit card, the one he loved to flash. He placed it on the tray with a flourish. I watched. The waiter took the card and walked to the terminal. He swiped it. He frowned. He swiped it again. He picked up the phone. I saw Hunter watching him. He looked annoyed. He gestured for the waiter to hurry up. The waiter walked back to the table. He did not hand the card back. He leaned down and whispered something. Hunter's face went red. He stood up, knocking his chair back. He was shouting now. I could not hear the words, but I knew the tune. "Do you know who I am? Try it again." He pulled out another card. A platinum one. The waiter took it. He walked back to the terminal. Declined. Hunter was sweating now. The blonde woman looked embarrassed. She was checking her phone, probably looking for an Uber. Hunter pulled out a third card, then a fourth. Declined. Declined. Every asset he had, every line of credit, every penny was frozen. I had locked him out of his own life. The manager came over. There was a heated discussion. Hunter was pointing at his chest, screaming about lawsuits. The manager pointed at the door. Hunter threw a napkin on the table and stormed out, leaving the blonde woman to pay the bill. She looked furious. Hunter burst out onto the sidewalk, blinking in the afternoon sun. He looked around wildly. He reached for his keys. He had parked his Porsche 911 right in the loading zone in front of the restaurant hazard lights, flashing because he thought rules did not apply to him. He marched toward the car, but he stopped. A tow truck was backing up to the Porsche, a big, ugly flatbed with a heavy winch. "Hey," Hunter screamed, running toward the driver. "Get away from my car! What do you think you are doing?" The driver, a big man with a beard, did not even look at him. He hopped out and started hooking the chains to the undercarriage. "This is a mistake," Hunter yelled, grabbing the driver's arm. "I am Hunter Kensington. Put my car down." The driver shoved him back. "Repo order, buddy. Payments are 6 months behind." The note holder called it in. "Note holder? What note holder? I financed through the dealer. Not anymore." "The debt was sold this morning. The new owner wants the asset secured immediately." The driver hit the lever. The winch whined. The front of the Porsche lifted into the air. "No, no, no," Hunter screamed. He looked like a child watching his favorite toy being taken away. I rolled down the window of my truck. "Hey, Hunter." He spun around. He saw me sitting in my rusted Ford 50 feet away. He saw the coffee cup in my hand. He saw the cold, flat look in my eyes. "Arthur," he breathed. I lifted my coffee cup in a mock toast. "You should have paid your bills, son," I said. Hunter looked at the tow truck dragging his Porsche up the ramp. He looked at the restaurant where he had just been humiliated. He looked at me. "You," he whispered, "you did this." I did not say anything. I just rolled up my window. Hunter stood on the curb, his expensive suit looking out of place, his face a mask of total confusion and fear. His phone rang. He looked at it. He did not answer. It rang again. He answered it. I saw his knees buckle. It was probably Patricia calling to tell him the electricity had just been cut off at the mansion. Or maybe it was the bank telling him the house was being foreclosed on tomorrow. I put the truck in gear and pulled away, leaving him standing in the exhaust fumes of his own destruction. The squeeze was on, and I was just getting started. The sun went down over the Kensington estate, but the lights did not come on. From my vantage point 2 blocks away inside my truck, I watched the mansion disappear into the gloom. I checked the monitor on my dashboard connected to the battery-powered hidden camera I had installed behind the wine rack during my raid on the basement. The feed was grainy night vision, but the audio was crystal clear. Inside the house, panic had set in like rot. They were sitting in the kitchen by the light of expensive scented candles. The refrigerator had stopped humming hours ago. The water pressure was gone. The toilets wouldn't flush. For people like Patricia and Hunter, who had never known a day of discomfort, this was the apocalypse. Hunter was pacing back and forth, his shadow stretching long and distorted against the cabinets. He looked ragged. His expensive suit was rumpled, and he kept running his hands through his hair. Patricia sat at the island clutching a glass of warm wine. Her face was twisted into a snarl. "This is your fault," she spat. Her voice was sharp enough to cut glass. "You and your gambling. You and your incompetence. If you had just handled Jasmine correctly, we would have the insurance money by now." "I handled it," Hunter shouted back, his voice cracking. "I did exactly what you told me to do, Mother. I mixed the powder. I played the grieving husband. You played it like a fool," Patricia retorted, slamming her glass down. "You got caught. And now look at us, sitting in the dark like peasants. The accounts are frozen, Hunter. My cards are declined, the cars are gone, and that savage Arthur Robinson owns our debt." She stood up, looming over him despite her small stature. "You are a useless leech, Hunter. You always have been. I should have let you rot in that Nevada prison when you got caught laundering money for the casinos. I should have let them break your legs, but no, I bailed you out. I cleaned up your mess, and this is how you repay me, by dragging me down into the gutter with you." Hunter stopped pacing. He looked at his mother with a mixture of fear and hatred. "We are in this together, Mom. If I go down, you go down." Patricia laughed. It was a cold, cruel sound. "Do not be stupid. Who bought the arsenic, Hunter? You did. Who administered it? You did. Who signed the policy documents? You did. I am just a grieving mother-in-law who tried to support her son. When the police come back with a warrant, and they will come back, I am going to tell them everything. I am going to tell them I suspected you were hurting her, but I was too afraid to speak up. I will turn state's witness against you so fast, your head will spin." Hunter stared at her, his mouth open. "You would not." "Watch me," she hissed. "One of us has to survive this. And it certainly won't be the man who couldn't even kill his wife properly." I watched the screen. This was it. The fracture point. They were cannibals, and they were starting to eat each other. I reached for my laptop. I had recorded the entire exchange. I opened my audio editing software. I did not need to fabricate anything. I just needed to highlight the truth. I isolated Patricia's voice. I cut out the context, leaving only the venom. "I should have let you rot in prison. I am going to tell them everything. One of us has to survive this." I saved the file. I titled it simply Mother's Love. I pulled up Hunter's contact info. I knew he still had his phone even if the service was about to be cut. He was running on Wi-Fi, probably siphoning it from the neighbors since his own router was dead. I hit send. Inside the dark kitchen on the grainy monitor, I saw Hunter's pocket light up. He pulled out his phone. He frowned. He tapped the screen. I watched his face as the audio played. In the silence of that dead house, Patricia's voice must have sounded like thunder. "I should have let you rot in prison. I will turn state's witness against you." Hunter looked up at his mother. She was busy trying to light another candle, her back to him, unaware that her own words were hanging in the air between them like a guillotine blade. Hunter's expression changed. The fear evaporated, replaced by a cold, desperate realization. He realized he was the scapegoat. He realized the woman who gave birth to him was sharpening the knife to stick in his back. He put the phone in his pocket. He did not say a word. He just walked out of the kitchen, leaving Patricia alone in the candlelight. I sat back in my truck and waited. I knew what he would do next. A rat will chew through its own leg to escape a trap, but it will chew through its mother's throat first if it thinks it will open a door. 10 minutes later, my burner phone buzzed, unknown number. I let it ring twice before answering. "Hello, Mr. Robinson? It is Hunter." He was whispering. I could hear the wind in the background. He must have gone out to the garden to avoid being heard. "What do you want, Hunter?" "I know what she is planning," he said, his voice trembling with adrenaline. "She is going to frame me. She is going to pin the whole thing on me." "She seems like a smart woman," I said dryly. "Listen to me, Arthur. I have something. I have the receipts." "What receipts?" "The arsenic, the heavy metals. She did not just tell me to buy them. She ordered them herself online using a prepaid card she thought was untraceable, but she had them shipped to a P.O. box in her maiden name. I have the shipping manifest. I have the emails she sent to the supplier on the dark web. I kept them, Arthur. I kept them just in case. Smart boy. Why are you telling me this? I want a deal. I know you have money. I know you bought the debt. You have the power to make this go away, or at least make it easier." I listened. He was trying to negotiate with the executioner. "What is the price, Hunter?" $100,000, cash, and a plane ticket to Mexico City. Tonight. I laughed. "You want me to pay you for evidence against your mother? She is going to send me to prison for life, Arthur. I am not going down for her. I will give you the physical proof, the laptop she used, the receipts, everything. It proves she was the mastermind. It proves she orchestrated the insurance fraud. It clears Jasmine of any wrongdoing and puts Patricia away forever. And you walk free." "I disappear," Hunter corrected. "You never see me again. Jasmine gets the insurance payout, the house, whatever is left. You get your vengeance on Patricia. I just want to survive." I thought about it. I did not need his evidence to destroy them. I already had enough to send them both to jail. But this was better. This was poetic justice. To have the son destroy the mother in front of the city's elite. "Fine," I said. 100,000. One-way ticket. When do we meet?" "Not tonight," I said. "Tomorrow night. Tomorrow. I cannot wait that long. You will wait. Tomorrow night is the annual Foundation Charity Gala downtown. Patricia is the chairwoman of the board, isn't she?" "Yes, but—" "Bring the evidence to the gala. Meet me at the service entrance at 8 o'clock. Hand me the proof and I will hand you a duffel bag with the cash and the ticket. Arthur, I cannot go there. I am out on bail. Do you want the money or not? Hunter, do you want to escape or do you want to wait for your mother to hand you over to the feds?" He was breathing hard. I could hear the gears turning in his head. He was terrified, but greed and self-preservation were powerful motivators. "Fine," he whispered. 8 o'clock. Service entrance. Do not screw me, Arthur. I hung up the phone. I sat there in the dark, looking at the silhouette of the mansion. I was not going to give him a dime. I was not going to let him go to Mexico. I was going to lure him into the spotlight. I was going to make sure that when the hammer came down, it came down on both of them in front of everyone they tried to impress. Tomorrow night, the Kensington dynasty was going to end, and I was going to be in the front row to watch it burn. The Kensington mansion was pitch black. I sat in my truck parked down the street watching the silhouette of the house against the night sky. The electricity had been cut an hour ago. The water had been shut off 20 minutes later. It was a beautiful thing to witness the slow, systematic dismantling of their comfort. Inside, I knew panic was setting in. I pulled up the feed from the hidden camera I had installed in the living room during my initial break-in. The backup battery on their security system was still running, feeding me a grainy green night vision image of their demise. Patricia was pacing back and forth, holding a candlestick holder like a weapon. Hunter was sitting on the expensive Italian sofa, his head in his hands. "Do something!" Patricia shrieked, her voice distorted by the microphone, but clear enough. "You are the man of the house. Fix this. Call the power company." I tried. Mom, Hunter yelled back, standing up. "They said the account is frozen. They said the new owner ordered a disconnect." "New owner? What new owner? This is my house." "Not anymore, Mom. We are foreclosed. We are trespassing right now." Patricia threw the candlestick holder across the room. It smashed into a mirror. "You useless idiot," she screamed. "This is all your fault. If you had not gambled away the equity, we would have had a cushion. If you had just stuck to the plan with Jasmine, we would be rich. But no, you had to get greedy. You had to get sloppy." I did what you told me to do, Hunter shouted. You said give her the special soup. You said it would look like postpartum depression. I did not tell you to get caught, Patricia hissed. I did not tell you to let her father into the house. You are weak, Hunter. You have always been weak. Your father knew it too. That is why he left everything to me. She walked over to him and loomed over him like a vulture. I should have let you rot in that Nevada jail cell when you got caught laundering money for the casinos, she spat. I should have let them break your legs. I spent my retirement savings bailing you out. I mortgaged this house to cover your debts, and this is how you repay me. By dragging me down into the gutter with you. I smiled in the darkness of my truck. There it was, the crack in the armor, the division. I tapped the screen of my tablet. I highlighted the last 30 seconds of audio. Patricia admitting she knew about the gambling. Patricia admitting she regretted saving him. Patricia calling him weak and useless. I hit save, then I hit send. Inside the house, Hunter's phone lit up the dark room. He looked at it. He hesitated, then he picked it up. I watched on the screen as he pressed play. Patricia's voice echoed in the silent room, tinny and sharp. I should have let you rot in that Nevada jail cell. Hunter looked up at his mother. The betrayal on his face was visible even in the grainy footage. You said that, he whispered. Patricia froze. Who sent you that? It does not matter, Hunter said, standing up slowly. You think I am the problem. You think I am the one dragging you down. You are the problem, Patricia yelled, not backing down. You are a millstone around my neck. And mark my words, Hunter, when the police come back, I am not going down for you. I will tell them everything. I will tell them you forced me. I will tell them I was a scared old woman doing what her violent son demanded. Hunter stared at her. For the first time, I saw the hate in his eyes, the same hate he had turned on my daughter. But now it was aimed at his creator. He backed away from her. You would frame me, he said. I will do what I have to do to survive, Patricia replied coldly. I suggest you do the same. Hunter turned and ran out of the room. He ran up the stairs into the darkness. I sat back in my seat. The seed was planted. The rats were turning on each other. Now I just had to wait for the bite. 10 minutes later, my burner phone rang. It was Hunter. I let it ring twice. Let him sweat. Let him think I was not going to answer. Then I picked up. Hello, Hunter. Arthur, he whispered. He sounded like he was hiding in a closet. I could hear his heavy breathing. Arthur, listen to me. I know what she is planning. She is going to pin it all on me. I know, Hunter. I sent you the tape. Yeah. Yeah, you did. Look, Arthur. You want justice, right? You want the person responsible. I want everyone responsible, Hunter. No, listen. It was her idea. All of it. The arsenic, the insurance. She found the supplier. She cooked the books. I was just following orders. I can prove it. Can you? Yes, I have the receipts, Arthur. I have the emails. I have a ledger she kept, a black book. It lists every ounce of poison she bought. It lists the dates. It proves premeditation, Arthur. It proves she is the mastermind. I stayed silent. I let him fill the void with his desperation. I can give it to you, he said, his voice rising in panic. I can give you the book. I can give you the evidence that puts her away for life. And what do you want, Hunter? I want out. I want $100,000 cash. And I want a plane ticket to Mexico. One way. Tonight. I laughed. A low, dry chuckle. You think I am going to pay you to run away? Think about it, Arthur. Without this book, it is her word against mine. She has expensive lawyers. She plays the sympathy card well. She might walk, or she might get a light sentence. But with this book, she dies in prison. Isn't that what you want? Isn't that worth $100,000? I thought about Jasmine lying in that hospital bed. I thought about the poison in her veins. I thought about Patricia standing in the hospital room looking down her nose at me. He was right. I wanted her to rot. And if letting him run for a few days meant nailing her to the wall, it was a price I was willing to pay. Because I knew something Hunter did not. I knew that Mexico has an extradition treaty, and I knew exactly where he would go. Fine, I said. We have a deal. Okay. Okay, good. Where do we meet? Tomorrow night, I said. At the Grand Plaza Hotel. The Grand Plaza. Why there? Because that is where the charity gala is happening tomorrow night. The one your mother is chairing. The one she is banking on to save her reputation. Arthur, I cannot go there. The police are not looking for you yet, Hunter. They are building a case. You are out on bail, remember? You are free to move, but my mother will be there. Exactly. Bring the book. Meet me in the kitchen service corridor at 8 p.m. I will have the cash. You give me the book. You leave out the back door and go straight to the airport." He hesitated. I could hear the gears turning in his frantic mind. 8 p.m., he said finally. "Do not screw me, Arthur. I do not screw people, Hunter. I just finish what they start." I hung up the phone. The trap was set. He would bring the evidence. He would think he was escaping. But he had forgotten one thing. I owned the debt on his car. I owned the debt on his house. And by tomorrow night, I would own the evidence that would destroy his family name forever. And as for the money, well, I would bring it. But Hunter Kensington was never going to spend a dime of it. I started the truck. The headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating the dead-end street. Tomorrow night, the Kensington dynasty would fall, and I would be there to watch it burn. The Grand Plaza Hotel ballroom was a cathedral of glass and light. The air smelled of lilies and desperation. This was the annual Founders Gala, the single most important social event in Chicago's high society calendar. It was the night where the city's elite gathered to pat themselves on the back for their generosity while wearing outfits that cost more than most families earned in a year. And right in the center of it, holding court like a queen on a crumbling throne, was Patricia Kensington. She looked magnificent from a distance. She was wearing a floor-length white silk gown that shimmered under the crystal chandeliers. Around her neck hung a diamond necklace that looked heavy enough to sink a ship. But I knew the truth. I knew that necklace was on loan from a jeweler who did not know her credit was frozen. I knew that dress was probably not paid for. Patricia was swimming in shark-infested waters, and she was bleeding, but she was smiling through it all. She had to be here. Her reputation was the only currency she had left. If she could charm the right donors, if she could secure her position on the board, she might just survive the storm that was coming. I watched her from the shadows of the entrance hall. She was laughing too loudly, touching the arms of the wealthy men she was talking to, trying so hard to prove she still belonged. She had no idea that the man who owned her debt, the man who held her fate in his hands, was standing 20 feet away watching her performance with the cold detachment of an executioner checking the sharpness of his blade. I stepped out of the shadows and walked toward the velvet rope. Tonight I was not wearing my Carhartt jacket or my work boots. Tonight I was wearing a bespoke Tom Ford tuxedo cut from midnight blue wool that fit my broad shoulders like a second skin. My shirt was crisp white cotton and my shoes were genuine alligator leather polished to a mirror shine. I looked like money, real money. Not the flashy, debt-fueled money that Hunter threw around, but the quiet, solid wealth that builds skyscrapers. I approached the entrance. Patricia spotted me immediately. Her eyes widened, not with recognition, but with disgust. She broke away from her conversation and marched toward me, her heels clicking on the marble floor like the ticking of a bomb. She stopped right in front of me, blocking my path, her face twisted into a sneer. "What do you think you are doing here, Arthur?" I looked down at her. I adjusted my cufflinks. "I am attending the Gala, Patricia." She let out a short, sharp laugh. "Attending? Look at you. You look like a chauffeur who stole his boss's clothes. This is a black tie event for donors, Arthur, not for the help. The service entrance is around the back if you are looking for a dishwashing job." She waved a hand at the massive security guard standing by the rope. "Security?" she barked. "Remove this man. He is trespassing. He is the violent individual I told the police about. He is harassing me." The guard, a wall of muscle in a cheap suit, stepped forward. He put a hand on his earpiece and looked at me. He saw a black man. He heard a rich white woman screaming. He did exactly what he was trained to do. "Sir, you need to step back," the guard said, moving into my personal space. "You are not on the list." I did not move. I did not flinch. I stared at the guard. "Check the list, son," I said, my voice calm and deep. "Check under R." "I am not checking anything," the guard said, reaching for my arm. "The lady asked you to leave. Now walk away or I will drag you away." Patricia smiled. It was a cruel, triumphant smile. "Go back to the gutter, Arthur. You do not belong here." The guard's hand was inches from my shoulder when a booming voice echoed across the foyer, stopping everyone in their tracks. "Unhand that man immediately." The guard froze. Patricia spun around. Walking toward us was William Sterling, the chairman of the charity board, and arguably the most powerful man in Chicago. He was tall, silver-haired, and radiated authority. He was flanked by 2 aides, but he pushed past them, his eyes fixed on me. Patricia's face lit up. "Oh, William, thank God you are here. This man is trying to crash the party. He is the one who attacked my son." I was just telling security to throw him out. William Sterling did not even look at her. He walked right past Patricia as if she were a ghost. He walked straight up to me and threw his arms wide. "Arthur," he boomed, pulling me into a bear hug that smelled of expensive scotch and cigars. "I did not think you were going to make it." I patted his back. "Hello, William. I would not miss it." William stepped back, keeping his hands on my shoulders. He turned to the guard, who was now looking very pale. "Do you know who this is, son?" William asked, his voice carrying through the silent hall. "This is Arthur Robinson. He is the reason we are all here tonight." Patricia made a choking sound. "William, what are you talking about? He is a mechanic." William turned to her, finally acknowledging her presence. His look was withering. "A mechanic. Patricia, this man is one of the finest structural engineers this country has ever produced. He built the Sterling Tower. He built the bridge you drive over to get here. And more importantly, he is the anonymous donor who just saved the Children's Hospital wing." William reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out an envelope. He held it up. "Arthur wired $1 million to the foundation this morning," William announced to the gathering crowd. $1 million, cash. No tax write-offs, no gala tables, just a direct transfer to save sick kids. He is the guest of honor tonight, Patricia, not you." The silence that followed was absolute. Every eye in the room turned to me. I saw respect. I saw curiosity. And when I looked at Patricia, I saw the end of her world. Her mouth opened and closed, like a fish on a dock. Her face went from pale to a blotchy red. She looked at me, and for the first time she saw the truth. She saw the man she had underestimated. She saw the power she had tried to crush. $1 million, she whispered. "But you drive a truck." "I drive what I want, Patricia," I said, my voice carrying clearly in the quiet room. "Because I own the road. And I own the bank that holds the note on your house." She took a step back. Her heel caught on the edge of the red carpet. She stumbled. In her hand she was holding a glass of heavy vintage Cabernet Sauvignon. As she fell, her grip tightened and the glass shattered. Red wine exploded onto her pristine white silk dress. It looked like a gunshot wound, a massive spreading stain of blood-red liquid soaking into the expensive fabric, ruining the borrowed gown, destroying the image of perfection she had fought so hard to maintain. She landed on her knees on the marble floor amidst the shards of glass and the puddle of wine. She looked up at me, wine dripping from her chin, tears welling in her eyes. The guests whispered. Phones came out. Photos were taken. William Sterling looked down at her with distaste. "Clean this up," he said to the guard, pointing at Patricia. Then he took my arm. "Come on, Arthur. Let me buy you a drink. We have a lot to discuss." I stepped over the puddle of wine and the woman kneeling in it. I did not look back. I walked into the ballroom, my head held high, ready to finish the job. Phase 1 was complete. Now it was time to meet Hunter in the kitchen. The spotlight hit me as I walked up the steps to the stage. It was bright, blindingly white, and hot against my skin. I adjusted the microphone stand. The heavy bass scraped against the floor, a harsh sound that echoed through the silent ballroom. Below me, 500 of Chicago's wealthiest citizens were watching. They were silent, waiting to hear what the mysterious structural engineer had to say. But there was one person who was not silent. Patricia Kensington had pulled herself up from the floor. Her white dress was stained blood red with wine. Her hair was coming loose from its pins, and her eyes were wild with panic. She knew. She looked at me standing there next to William Sterling, and she knew that I was not there to give a speech about charity. She lunged toward the stage. "Stop him!" she screamed, her voice cracking. "Do not let him speak. He is a criminal. He is lying." She tried to scramble up the stairs, clawing at the velvet ropes. She looked like a desperate animal. It was pathetic. It was ugly. And it was exactly what I wanted everyone to see. 2 security guards stepped in her path. They did not touch her gently this time. They blocked her with their bodies' solid walls of muscle that she could not move. "Mrs. Kensington, please step back," one of them said, his voice firm. She flailed, hitting the guard's chest with her fists. "You work for me," she shrieked. "I am the chairwoman. Get him off the stage." I leaned into the microphone. My voice boomed through the speakers, deep and steady, filling every corner of the room. "Let her watch," I said. "She has a front row seat to the demolition. William Sterling stepped back, giving me the floor. He crossed his arms and watched Patricia with a look of pure disgust. I looked out at the crowd. I saw the confusion on their faces. They did not understand what was happening. They thought this was some kind of performance art or a terrible misunderstanding. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began. "My name is Arthur Robinson. You know me as the donor who just saved the children's hospital wing. But Patricia Kensington knows me by another name. She knows me as the mechanic, the laborer, the nobody she thought she could crush." Patricia was screaming again, but her voice was drowned out by the sound system. "Tonight we are here to talk about giving," I continued, "about supporting those who cannot support themselves. But charity begins at home, does it not? And sometimes the most charitable thing you can do is expose the rot that is eating away at the foundation of your community." I pulled a small remote control from my pocket. I had given the tech crew specific instructions. Or rather, old Mike had hacked into the presentation server 5 minutes ago and replaced the slideshow. I pressed the button. Behind me, the massive projection screen that had been displaying the Foundation's logo flickered. The image changed. A collective gasp went through the room. It was a sound like all the air being sucked out of the building at once. Projected on the screen 20 feet tall was a legal document. It was a mortgage deed. The header read, "First National Bank," but there was a stamp across it in bold red letters, "Assigned." And below that, clearly legible to everyone in the room, was the name of the new note holder, Arthur Robinson. Next to it appeared a second document, a foreclosure notice. Dated today, served to Patricia and Hunter Kensington for default on loans totaling $4 million. "This is the Kensington estate," I said, pointing to the screen. Or rather, it was. "As of this morning, I own the debt. I own the land, and I own the house." Patricia stopped screaming. She stared at the screen, her mouth open in horror. The guests were whispering frantically now, pointing at the documents. The facade of wealth, the illusion of power she had carefully curated for decades, was crumbling in seconds. "But I am not done," I said. "Money is just paper. You can lose money and still have your honor. But what happens when you trade your soul for a payout?" I pressed the button again. The screen went black for a second. Then a video started playing. It was grainy night vision footage, but the image was sharp enough. It showed a modern kitchen, the Kensington kitchen. The timestamp in the corner read October 14th, 7 p.m. Hunter Kensington walked into the frame. He looked over his shoulder, checking to see if he was alone. He opened a cabinet and pulled out a small, unmarked jar. He opened a pot that was simmering on the stove. The entire ballroom was deadly silent. You could hear a pin drop. On the screen, Hunter took a spoon. He scooped white powder from the jar. He dumped it into the soup. He stirred it. Then he tasted it, frowned, and added another spoonful. He put the jar back. He wiped the counter. He smiled. It was a chilling smile, a smile of pure malice. Then the audio kicked in. It was faint, picked up by the camera's microphone, but audible. "Eat up," Jasmine Hunter muttered on the screen. "Daddy needs to get paid." The video froze on his face. The reaction in the room was visceral. People cried out. Someone dropped a glass. Oh. The shock wave of revulsion hit the stage like a physical force. I looked at the crowd. "That is my son-in-law," I said, my voice trembling with suppressed rage. "That is Hunter Kensington poisoning my daughter. That powder is arsenic. He did it every day for 6 months. He did it to collect on a $5 million life insurance policy. And his mother helped him buy the poison." I pointed at Patricia. She was frozen, staring at the screen, her face a mask of absolute terror. She knew there was no coming back from this, no spin, no PR firm. This was the end. But where was Hunter? I scanned the room. The guests were looking around, searching for the monster they had just seen on screen. Movement caught my eye near the back of the room. The service doors. The doors that led to the kitchen where we were supposed to meet. Hunter was there. He had been watching from the shadows, waiting for his money. He had seen the video. He knew I had played him. He pushed open the service door and bolted. I dropped the microphone. It hit the stage with a thud that sounded like a gavel banging down. I jumped off the stage, clearing the stairs in one leap. I ran down the center aisle. The crowd parted for me like the Red Sea. They saw the look on my face. They saw the father coming for justice. I burst through the service doors into the kitchen. It was a chaotic maze of stainless steel and shouting chefs. Hunter was running toward the loading dock exit at the far end. He was knocking over pans, pushing staff out of the way. He was fast fueled by the adrenaline of a rat fleeing a sinking ship. But I knew this building. I had built the loading dock extension in '92. I knew the layout better than he did. I did not chase him in a straight line. I cut through the prep station, vaulting over a stainless steel table. I took the shortcut through the dry storage corridor. Hunter burst out onto the loading dock platform. The night air was cool. He ran toward the edge, looking for a way down, looking for freedom. He stopped. I was standing at the bottom of the ramp, blocking his path. I had beaten him there. He skidded to a halt, his dress shoes sliding on the concrete. He looked behind him. The kitchen staff were gathering in the doorway, watching. He looked at me. He was trapped. "Move! Arthur," he screamed, his voice cracking. "Move or I will kill you." He reached into his jacket. He pulled out a knife. A steak knife he must have grabbed from a table. I did not flinch. I did not move. I stood there, my tuxedo jacket unbuttoned, my hands loose at my sides. "Put it down, Hunter," I said calmly. "I want my money," he yelled. "You promised me money. You promised me a ticket to Mexico." "I lied," I said. "Just like you lied to Jasmine. Just like you lied to everyone." He lunged. It was a desperate, clumsy move. He swung the knife wild and wide. I stepped inside his guard. I grabbed his wrist with my left hand, twisting it until I heard the snap of cartilage. He screamed and dropped the knife. I drove my right fist into his stomach. All my weight, all my anger, all the pain of seeing my daughter in that hospital bed. He folded in half, gasping for air. I grabbed him by the collar of his expensive jacket and slammed him against the brick wall of the loading dock. His head bounced off the masonry. His legs gave out, but I held him up. I leaned in close, my face inches from his. "Mexico is beautiful this time of year. Hunter," I whispered. "The beaches, the sun." I tightened my grip on his throat. His eyes bulged. He clawed at my hands, but he was weak. So weak. "But state prison is closer," I hissed, "and you are going to love the food there. I hear they do not serve soup." Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. The police were coming. I had timed it perfectly. Hunter started to cry. Snot and tears ran down his face, mixing with the blood from his lip. "Please, Arthur," he sobbed. "Please let me go. She made me do it. My mother made me do it." I looked at him with zero pity. "You are a grown man, Hunter. You made your choice." I let him drop. He slid down the wall and curled into a ball on the concrete, weeping like a child. The blue lights of the police cruisers flashed against the alley walls, illuminating the trash cans and the grease traps. I straightened my tie. I smoothed my jacket. I watched as the officers swarmed the dock, guns drawn. It was over. The Kensingtons were done. And I, Arthur Robinson, the mechanic, the nobody, was the last man standing. The interrogation room smelled of stale coffee and fear, a scent I knew well from my days working on sites where corners were cut and inspectors were bribed. But this was different because the man sweating through his expensive shirt on the other side of the one-way glass was not a corrupt foreman. He was my son-in-law. I stood in the observation room with Sarah Jenkins and Detective Johnson, watching the final collapse of the Kensington dynasty. Hunter sat hunched over the metal table, his hands cuffed to the bar, his hair a mess of sweat and gel. He looked small. Without his mother to protect him, without his money to shield him, he was just a scared boy facing a life in a cage. The detective inside the room leaned forward, placing a photo of the arsenic jar on the table. "Start talking, Hunter," he said, his voice flat and hard. "Or take the fall for everything. Your choice." Hunter cracked like cheap drywall. It was pathetic to watch. He started crying, snot running down his face. It was her idea, he blubbered, pointing at the empty chair where his mother should be. She found the supplier. She knew a guy in the chemical industry who could get industrial-grade arsenic off the books. She said it was the only way to save the estate. I watched through the glass, eating a stale donut, not because I was hungry, but because it felt good to do something so mundane while watching a monster destroy himself. Hunter kept talking, spewing venom and secrets. "She made me do it," he sobbed. "She said Jasmine was useless to us alive. She said the trust fund was locked up until she was 35, but the life insurance paid out immediately upon accidental death. We waited 2 years for the suicide clause to expire. It was all her plan. I just put the powder in the soup. I did not want to do it." The door to the interrogation room opened, and 2 officers dragged Patricia in. She was still wearing her wine-stained gala dress, but now she looked like a banshee. They sat her down next to her son. She looked at him with pure hatred. "You spineless worm," she shrieked, lunging at him before the officers restrained her. "You are blaming me. I gave you everything. I paid your gambling debts. I cleaned up your messes. You told me to kill her. Hunter screamed back, his face red and twisted. "You said she was worth more dead than alive. You bought the poison, Mom. You signed for the package." I turned to Sarah. "Did you get that?" "We got it," she said, a grim smile on her face. "Conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, admission of motive. It is over, Arthur. They are burying each other." I watched them scream at each other, mother and son tearing each other apart like starving rats in a bucket. There was no love there. There was no loyalty. There was only greed and the desperate need to survive. It was the ugliest thing I had ever seen, and I could not look away. The door to the observation room opened. I turned, expecting another officer. Instead, I saw a wheelchair. Jasmine was sitting in it. She was wearing hospital scrubs, and a blanket was draped over her legs. Her face was pale, and she looked exhausted, but her eyes were clear. The poison was leaving her system, and the fire was coming back. "Dad," she said, her voice raspy. "I want to see him." "Jasmine, you do not have to do this," I said, moving to her side. "We have the confession. It is done. I need to see him, Dad. I need him to look at me." I looked at the detective. He nodded. We wheeled Jasmine into the interrogation room. The shouting stopped instantly. Hunter looked up. When he saw his wife, the color drained from his face, leaving him gray and sickly. Patricia looked away, unable to face the woman she had tried to erase. Jasmine wheeled herself right up to the table. She looked at the handcuffs. She looked at the sweat on Hunter's forehead. Hunter started to cry again. A fresh wave of tears that looked as fake as his architectural awards. "Jasmine, baby," he choked out, reaching his cuffed hands toward her. "I am so sorry. You have to believe me. She made me do it. I love you. I never wanted to hurt you. Please tell them to let me go. We can start over. I will get help." He was begging. He was pleading for his life, using the same voice he had used to convince her to marry him. The same voice he had used to tell her the soup was good for her. Jasmine stared at him. She did not blink. She let him ramble on about second chances and forgiveness. She let him pour out his excuses until the room was thick with his cowardice. Then she moved. It was not a weak movement. It was not the movement of a sick woman. It was a strike. She leaned forward and slapped him. The sound was like a whip crack. It echoed off the concrete walls. Hunter's head snapped to the side. A bright red handprint bloomed instantly on his pale cheek. He stared at her in shock. "You do not love me," Jasmine said, her voice low and steady, vibrating with a power I had not heard in years. "You never loved me. You loved the idea of me. You loved the money you thought I had. You loved the insurance payout." Hunter opened his mouth to speak, but she cut him off. "You watched me eat poison every day for 6 months, she hissed. "You held the spoon, you kissed me goodnight and waited for me to die." "That is not love, Hunter. That is a transaction." She leaned back in her wheelchair, looking at him with total disgust. "You did not love your wife, Hunter. You loved my corpse, because my corpse was worth $5 million. Hunter slumped in his chair, defeated. The truth hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. Jasmine turned her chair around. She did not look at Patricia. She did not look at Hunter again. "Let's go, Dad," she said. "I am done here." I wheeled her out of the room, leaving the Kensingtons to their silence and their chains. The sentencing hearing 3 months later was a formality, but it was a formality I savored. The courtroom was packed. The media had eaten up the story of the architect and the socialite who tried to murder the pharmacist. They called it the poison soup case. I sat in the front row with Jasmine and Zoe. Jasmine looked healthy. Her skin was glowing again and she had gained weight. Zoe was sitting on my lap, drawing in a coloring book, oblivious to the fact that the monsters were about to be put away forever. The district attorney read the charges. It was a long list. 2 counts of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, 2 counts of attempted first-degree murder, insurance fraud, kidnapping, child endangerment, financial fraud, forgery. Hunter and Patricia stood before the judge. They looked small. The arrogance was gone, replaced by the hollow look of people who know their life is over. They had tried to plea bargain, but the DA refused. The evidence was too overwhelming. The video, the audio, the financial trail. My testimony. The judge was an older woman with glasses perched on her nose. She looked at them over the rim of her spectacles with a mixture of pity and revulsion. "In all my years on the bench," she said, her voice ringing through the court, "I have rarely seen a case of such calculated cruelty within a family. You betrayed every trust. You violated the sanctity of marriage and parenthood for money. She shuffled her papers. Hunter Kensington, I sentence you to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Patricia Kensington, for your role as the architect of this conspiracy, I sentence you to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The gavel banged down. It was the sweetest sound I had ever heard. Patricia screamed. It was a raw animal sound of despair. She was dragged away, kicking and screaming, her dignity finally completely gone. Hunter did not scream. He just hung his head and let the bailiffs lead him away. It was over. I looked at Jasmine. She was crying, but they were tears of relief. She squeezed my hand. "We did it, Dad," she whispered. "We did it, baby girl," I said. I picked up Zoe. She looked at me with big brown eyes. "Is the bad man gone?" Pop, she asked. "Yes, sweetie," I said, kissing her forehead. "The bad man is gone, and he is never coming back." We walked out of the courthouse into the bright afternoon sun. The air tasted fresh. The city looked clean. I adjusted my suit, buttoned my jacket, and walked my family to the car. We had a lot of work to do. We had a new house to buy, a new life to build. But for the first time in a long time, the foundation was solid. The sale of the Kensington estate was not a transaction, it was an exorcism. I stood on the perfectly manicured lawn one last time, watching the crews from the development company survey the land. I had sold the debt and the deed to a firm that specialized in high-density affordable housing. Patricia Kensington's beloved mansion, the symbol of her status and her exclusion, would be gutted and turned into 12 apartment units for working-class families. I knew that somewhere in her prison cell the news would reach her, and it would hurt more than the confinement itself. She had spent her life trying to keep people like me out, and now families just like mine would be living in her parlor. The money from the sale was substantial even after paying off the liens and the taxes. I took every penny of it and I poured it into a different kind of project. Jasmine had a small house she had bought before she married Hunter. It was a charming Victorian on a quiet street, a place she had loved before he convinced her it was too small and too common for a Kensington. She had sold it to a holding company to pay for his debts years ago. I tracked down the owner and bought it back for cash, $50,000 over the asking price, because I did not have time to haggle. But I could not let her move back into a house that held the ghosts of her mistakes. I called in my crew. We stripped that house down to the studs. We tore out the drywall where Hunter had once hung his pretentious art. We ripped up the floorboards where he had walked. I redesigned the layout myself, opening up the kitchen to let in the light, reinforcing the foundation, making it stronger than it had ever been. We installed new windows, new plumbing, and a security system that would rival Fort Knox. I spent weeks on my knees laying the new hardwood floors, sanding them by hand until the grains sang. Every stroke of the sandpaper was a promise. I was scrubbing away the past. I was smoothing out the rough edges of her trauma. When we were finished, the house did not smell like old memories or regret. It smelled of fresh paint, sawdust, and cedar. It smelled like a new beginning. I handed Jasmine the keys on a Tuesday afternoon. She stood on the porch holding Zoe's hand, and she cried. But they were not tears of sadness. They were tears of relief. She walked through the front door, and for the first time in years, she breathed easy. The walls were not melting. The shadows were not watching her. She was home. And this time, the foundation was built on rock, not sand. 12 months have passed since the trial, and sometimes it feels like a lifetime ago. The seasons have changed, and with them, so have we. I drove my old Ford down the main street of our neighborhood, slowing down as I approached a storefront with a fresh green awning. The sign above the door read, "Robinson Pharmacy and Wellness." I parked and watched through the large glass windows. Jasmine was behind the counter wearing a white coat that was crisp and clean. She was talking to an elderly customer, holding her hand, explaining a prescription with a patience and kindness that made my chest swell with pride. She was not just a pharmacist anymore. She was the owner. She was the CEO. I had used a portion of the settlement money and the rest of the Kensington liquidation funds to set her up. We bought out a struggling chain of independent drugstores and rebranded them. Jasmine ran the operations with a fierce intelligence that had been suppressed for too long. She hired staff who looked like the community they served. She started outreach programs for addiction recovery, using her own story to help others. She was a force of nature. I watched her laugh at something the customer said, her head thrown back, her eyes crinkling at the corners. She looked radiant. The hollow cheeks and the haunted eyes of the woman in the hospital bed were gone. She had gained weight, healthy muscle, and curves. She wore her hair natural now, a crown of curls that framed a face full of life. She was no longer defined by who she had married. She was defined by what she had built. I got out of the truck and walked into the store. The bell above the door chimed. Jasmine looked up and her face lit up. "Hey, Dad," she called out. "You are early." "I am never early," I said, winking at the customer. "Everyone else is just late." I went to the back where the office was. Zoe was there sitting at a small table doing her homework. But she abandoned her books the moment she saw me. Pop, pop, she squealed, launching herself into my arms. I caught her easily lifting her high. She smelled of dirt and sunshine. "Are we going to the garden?" she asked, her eyes wide with excitement. "You bet we are," I said. "The tomatoes need tying up and the peppers are ready to pick." We left the pharmacy hand in hand. Zoe skipped along the sidewalk, chattering about school and her friends. She did not ask about her father anymore. She did not have nightmares about being taken away. She was just a 5-year-old girl, loved and safe. We arrived at my house and went straight to the backyard. I had expanded the garden, turning the entire double lot into an urban farm. We had rows of collard greens, towers of beans, and beds of marigolds to keep the bugs away. I watched Zoe dig in the dirt with her small trowel. She was focused, determined. She found a worm and held it up, laughing. "Look, Pop, Pop," she said. "He is working the soil." "Yes, he is, baby," I said, kneeling beside her. "Everything has a job to do. Even the smallest things make the ground stronger." She went back to digging. I wiped the sweat from my forehead and looked at my hands. They were dirty, calloused, and wrinkled. These hands had built skyscrapers. They had held a gun to defend my family. They had rebuilt a house, and now they were planting seeds for the next generation. The sun was setting, casting a golden light over the garden. I sat back on the bench I had built under the old maple tree and watched my granddaughter play. The peace in my heart was a physical sensation, warm and solid. People always say that money cannot buy happiness. I have heard that my whole life, usually from people who either had too much of it or none at all. And in a spiritual sense, they are right. Money cannot buy the laughter of a child. It cannot buy the love of a daughter. It cannot buy the peace of a clear conscience. But as I sat there looking at the abundance of my life, I knew the other side of that coin. Money bought the lawyers who destroyed the lies Patricia told. Money bought the independent lab tests that proved the poison was real. Money bought the privacy and the security that allowed Jasmine to heal without worrying about rent or bills. Money bought the power to stand in a room full of people who hated me and make them listen. Money bought the freedom to kick the bastards out of our lives and keep them out. I looked at Zoe, her knees stained with mud, her smile bright as a diamond. They thought I was just a poor old black man. They thought I was weak. They forgot that carbon under pressure becomes the hardest substance on earth. I am Arthur Robinson. I am a father. I am a grandfather. And I am the pressure that broke them. Zoe looked up and waved. I waved back. "That is enough happiness for me," I whispered to the wind. "That is enough. Life has a funny way of teaching us who people really are when the storm hits. I learned that true wealth isn't the car you drive or the mansion you mortgage. It's the freedom to protect the ones you love. They underestimated me because of my skin and my clothes, but they forgot that the strongest steel is forged in the hottest fire. Don't let anyone define your worth based on appearances. Build your foundation. Keep your silence, and when the time comes, be the storm they never saw coming. Family isn't just blood. It's who stands beside you in the rain. If this story fired you up, hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Tell me in the comments, what's the biggest battle you've ever fought for your family? I read everyone. Subscribe to the channel and I'll see you in the next story.